I'll call the meeting of the Ojai City Council to order and welcome everybody. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Johnston.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Francina.
Here.
Councilmember Blatz.
Here.
Councilmember Haney.
Here.
Councilmember Wyrick.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum. Councilmember Ryan, would you do us the honor of leading us in the pledge?
Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
There we get back to it. Okay, first order of business is the approval of the agenda. Do we have any changes to the order?
Mayor Johnston, I would request that items G and I and the consent calendar be pulled for individual discussion.
I'll second that if it's needed.
Okay, we'll pull those two. Are there any other changes? If not, we will consider the agenda approved without objection as amended. We have a couple of presentations to make. Pardon me, my mic's not on. There we are. We have a couple of presentations this evening to get started. There is a presentation for a poster for Ojai Day, and I'm going to take that first. Is there someone here with a poster? Renee.
Mayor Johnston and members of the council, we actually have a slide and a picture of the poster as we honor this year's 2019 poster to a local artist. And his name is, Ojai studio artist Rex Cochell. And if we can show the poster for everybody. It should be the next slide.
Oh.
No.
Ta-da.
Oh.
That's our poster. No.
Oh, all right. Oh,
Yeah.
that's gorgeous.
And it's called City Centerpiece. And this artist, again, it's Rex Cochell. He lives in Ojai, and his artwork spans over a 30-year time. His history is he's an instructor. He was an instructor for Ventura High School for over 34 years. And he retired in 2004. He is a longtime member of both the Buenaventura Art Association and the Santa Barbara Art Association. And so we really honor this, his presentation of this artwork for this event. In addition, Rex has works displayed in Avalon and Catalina, and the C.C. Gallagher's, and his most recent work on locations where he has traveled, and as a newfound time as an educator, and retired. So he really loves still doing art, and we really appreciate the work that he put, and are honored to present this for Ojai Day.
Okay, well, thank you, Renee. It's very nice, and
Where's the eye?
I don't know. I was wondering if it was cropped.
Where's the eye?
Is it cropped?
The blue right in the middle, OI.
Where?
Ojai.
Where is it?
That is the work as he created it.
Oh, okay. All right.
There isn't eye.
And you can
Oh,
see down
artistic
below,
license.
it actually, in the black letters, it says OJAI underneath. Okay. Yeah. Well, no, it's actually also on the poster.
I see
okay.
it all.
Yeah, this is a presentation of the poster, not a... Yeah.
I'm sure the president could Sharpie in an eye.
Yeah.
We needed him to.
It's actually inside as well, above the arches.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see it. That's right.
We'd like you to send it back and have the eye.
No.
Okay, yeah, we can do the proofreading later or attend the art critics.
Very
gathering.
beautiful.
Okay, it's very attractive. And Renee, before you leave,
Saved
would
us
you like to
250
announce Ojai Day?
Ojai Day officially begins October 19th, and we're looking forward to the festivities as we do annually, and we're really excited about the day. It's going to be a big event.
What time does it start?
10
It's on the
Yeah,
bottom.
10 to 5.
Okay,
Says
10 to 5.
10 to 5
Well,
on
But
the
we're preparing
19th.
for it Friday night, Saturday.
Oh, we'll actually start Friday night. Yeah.
Correct.
Well,
This is your first Ojai, right? Your
That's
first-
right.
Go, welcome.
Thank you.
Get ready.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Right. Okay, I have a proclamation that I'm going to present to our local historian. Brian, you're going to be the man. Tonight, we wanted to just remind everybody of the generosity of the Smith-Hobson family. You are sitting in the living room and former dining room of the Smith-Hobson family when this home was originally constructed back in 1907, I believe, and it was a craftsman. In the interior, you can see still has the craftsman touch. But around 1917, when they did the Community Beautiful program and built the arcade downtown and, sort of spruced up the old western town, the Smith-Hobson family had built this as kind of a weekend or holiday cottage. I guess it would be the great-grandfather of Grace, I think. Maybe it was just the grandfather. But anyway, they went to the effort and had it all done in the same, what do they call this? Colonial revival or mission revival. The patriarch of the family came during the gold rush, apparently, because it came in 1849, and was an entrepreneur, had mining interests, a hotel up in Sacramento, but when he he lived wherever he wanted to live, he found this lovely little place on the seashore in Southern California called Buenaventura, and this was Santa Barbara County. A lot of people don't know that this used to be Santa Barbara County, but Mr. Hobson was one of the prime movers that divided up what was Santa Barbara County into Santa Barbara and Ventura County. Eventually, as his two sons, I guess they were butchers and meat packers, and they raised their family up here. And then Grace, who was married to Fred Smith, and who asked that when the family didn't want to live here anymore, that it be put to a good public purpose. Grace, I believe, was one of I think the valedictorian of the first graduating class of Nordhoff High School. And so the family did bequeath this through Fred Smith and his daughters Barbara and Margaret, and Jim Lobel, our former mayor, took a 29-year-old city manager one morning and says, "Come on, we're going down and we're going to get a permanent site for City Hall." And that city manager was moi. And so I went down and sat in on this meeting, and I am the last survivor of the meeting, but it was an incredibly generous thing they did. And in keeping with the Smith-Hobson family's they were known for integrity in their business dealings, and when they gave this property to us, Mr. Ruiz, who'd been their gardener for decades, lived on the property across the street, which is now a parking lot, but there was a house there, and the condition of us accepting the property is that Mr. Ruiz could be there as long as he wished to, and he did, and continued to take care of the roses in the front yard, and so it was a wonderful thing that they did for the city. And around 1976, the city dedicated the City Hall. When I was city manager here in 1971, we were in the World University Service building. The court was there too. The police station was there too. We were very concentrated at the time. So by '76, this had been outfitted with the help of Zelma Wilson and Bud Wild, who used to be on our architectural review board, a couple of architects that were great participants in the community. And then, in 2017, the City Council, on recommendation of the Historic Preservation Commission, made this, I believe it is landmarks 23? 23. So to be preserved for the future and for everyone's benefit. So With that, Brian, I will give you the proclamation, which is a big thank you card to the Smith-Hobson family, and you may add whatever else you'd like, and I'll bring this out to you.
Great, thank you, excuse me. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, City Council, for approving the Smith-Hobson home as the city landmark. When I mentioned our good friend David Mason that we were going to take this up as a landmark before the Historic Preservation Commission, he said, actually, Brian, that was the number one item when we first got together 30 years ago. Glad it finally got done.
Wow.
Number one, huh? That's what he told me.
That's right.
Got to believe David, right?
Probably right.
You know, do you remember the old Paul Masson wine commercials with Orson Welles, where he said, we release no wine before it's time?
Yeah, right.
Ojai is sort of that way with most of the things on our agenda. Sometimes it takes 30 years.
Yeah.
They are very nice. So again, just little interesting things. Earlier this year, the museum was having an event. They allowed us to finish that event here. Councilman Wyrick and his wife were the hosts. The city was nice enough to allow us to go pretty much anywhere we could go. So I, who had recently found out how you get to the attic.
Yes.
When y'all walk out this door here, look to the left, you'll see this little wood door that you've never noticed in your life, no matter how many times you've been here. That actually goes to a very lovely, spacious attic that's just above us. We took them and showed them the nice fireplaces that you all have in your offices, so you can all kick back, read a nice novel. And the one thing that we heard about and verified that it actually exists, but I don't think anyone had it was nighttime, and that was to go down into the attic, or to the basement, and there is a basement here.
Our deputy
I
city
was gonna
clerk
say,
is
yes.
our guide to the basement.
Gail can verify it. One of these days, I'll actually make it down there, but yes.
And also, the stairway to the attic is not current code compliant.
It isn't. So I stood halfway up and reminded people which steps were creaking.
Yeah.
So, yes, but no, very nice of the council to open that up to us, but most importantly to make this a city landmark. And so one of the things that the commission wanted to do, especially Elise, who's recently left, was to just do some kind of official proclamation to recognize the Smith-Hobson family. Key Greg Smith is the one who worked with Elise in getting the information. And so I will take this on behalf of Greg Smith, and I will take it personally to the office that they have down in Ventura and present that to them on behalf of all of you. So again, thank you very much. Fine wine, I guess, is
Yeah, right.
finally got there.
Right. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
One other little interesting note about the Smith-Hobson family is that Fred Smith, who survived his wife and who was the prime mover to have this dedicated or transferred to the city, was also the international president of the Lions Club, and one of their major efforts is international peace, and was present when the United Nations Charter was signed. And if you drive north on 101, as you get up into the Salinas Valley area, you'll see the names Teague, as in the Teague family from Santa Paula. You'll see Lagomasino, and you'll see Hobson. Those are the three roads you go past as you head north. So they did a lot of good, and I think that's where Fred went when he left here. He took me on a tour of this place, and the office of the city manager was what Fred referred to as his loot room. It's where he kept all of his memorabilia from the Lions Club. And when Fred left, he was very frugal. He took a lot of the fixtures out of the house and took them up to the ranch in the Salinas Valley. So anyway, but he left the good part,
He did.
the building.
Again, thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, it's a tad early, but we do have public comment coming up, and before, well, I'll tell you what, why don't we do the consent agenda, and
I would
we pulled
move-
the two items so that people can comment on it.
Well, could I just go ahead and move approval of everything except I and G
Right.
on the consent calendar?
There's, it's moved and seconded. Is any objection? If not, so ordered. Okay.
I have a question on I.
Okay, we have a
Or
question.
G, excuse me, G.
G and I. Do you want to deal with the question on G first?
Yeah, two quick questions. Just as a matter of protocol, I would just like to make the comment that when we have I've always requested this, that when we have an amendment to a contract, that we also always include the core contract. Probably not a big issue in this, but just as a general rule of thumb, I think the contracts that being amended should be included in the packet. And then two questions that probably would be answered if the whole contract was there. One, what is the termination? Since we're extending this for 3 years plus 2 year, 2 additional 1 year, you always want to know what the termination clause is, just in case something happens with the relationship. You happen to know what the termination is? It's not in here.
Don't know it off the top of my head, but Greg, our Public Works Director, is here, and I think he has it, so. Let's see.
Good evening, council. Yeah, I think right, it was expiring in October of this year.
Right.
So that 3-year extension plus potential for
Option
2
for
additional
2
1
years.
years.
In those time periods, the additional 3 years and the optional, what are the termination provisions?
Termination was any cause for the city or even the contractor.
This 30-day notice termination?
30-day, exactly.
Mutual- Okay, no problem, mutual 30-day?
Yes.
Okay. And the other question is, the restroom during special events, there's been an issue with Sterling. You're supposed to sit down with Sterling, and this is a question that presages later in the agenda. But you basically have within the power say, you're not doing a good job, I'm going to make you maybe use PJ, for example. And is this contract contemplate and include the option of what we would be charging Sterling for services if necessary?
Yes, we have fixed hourly additional services that we exercise with PJs at times for special cleaning,
Okay.
including support for the restrooms and so on.
Okay, thank you.
If I could add that last year we had received some concerns about the bathrooms after events. This year, neither Greg nor myself have received any complaints. And we sat down earlier this year and talked to them about it.
Great, okay.
Okay, any other,
I'll move approval.
okay, we have a
I
motion.
just have one comment. I just,
Right.
my observation of PJ's work and work ethics is, for the last couple of years, has just been incredible and outstanding. You know, she's there when she says she'll be there. She does what she says she's going to do. She's just an incredible asset to the community.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Second?
Okay, any objection to the motion? Okay, do we need, is it a money issue, or?
Let's see.
It is.
Yeah, it is money, and it's a decent amount, so unfortunately,
Okay,
it
will
will be
the clerk
a vote.
call the roll?
Mayor Johnston?
Yes.
Councilmember Francina?
Yes.
Councilmember Blatz?
Yes.
Councilmember Haney?
Yes.
Councilmember Wyrick?
Yes.
Okay, and we still have item I. Do we want to do that to take
We do
that?
after public, or?
Yeah, for the benefit of the audience, we have public comment, which is coming up, and public comment is for those topics that are not on the regular agenda. We have pulled item number I, so that will be on the regular agenda. So we'll take the just general comments on topics other than that and what is listed here, and then the first item up will be I, which has to do with the Agricultural Commissioner and pesticides. The council cannot, under public comment, actually engage the public in any sort of debate or take any action on it, because it's not those topics are not listed on our agenda. And each person who has the opportunity to speak has a 3-minute time limit, which we appreciate if everybody holds to it. If you're here to talk about pesticides or the traffic issues on Creek Road, those you'll have a chance to take up separate from public comment. Okay, with that, I've got 4 public comment cards. Monica? Come on up. And Peggy Lucera, you are on deck.
Hi,
Hi.
my name is Monica Schreck. I just moved to Ojai, and I noticed that you have this beautiful demonstration garden That's fairly fallow, and I just wanted to introduce myself as a gardener and someone who is interested in working on that if that was something that the city wanted.
Oh, well,
Please
thank-
give your contact information, to Deputy City Clerk. You 2 council people will be contacting you.
Contacting you.
Okay, I'll give you my business card.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you, and welcome.
Yeah. Peggy, you're up with Chris Young on deck.
I'm going to defer to Chris Young.
Okay.
Good evening, Council. Old topic, climate change, and wanted to say thank you for our movement forward on this. I really appreciate that. I look forward to understanding more about exactly what is happening with the mobilization committee, or whatever it's called. Also want to say that it took a little bit of time last evening, a couple of hours, to go to Ventura to their city council meeting. The reason I went there is because I have worked there for 36 years, and so I feel like I have a stake there. And as I mentioned to them, we also share climate. I know for some individuals that's a little difficult to understand about sharing climate, but and so some of us are really working to help the city of Ventura get on board and to at least make a statement about what each of the council members believe to be the situation relative to climate, whether it is an emergency or not, which I believe it is. So again, I wanted to thank you and look forward with our ongoing progress in that area. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chris, and for all the work you do.
And help keep us informed about what Ventura is doing.
Nick Ojai. Nick, you're out. On the eye, okay. But the I in Nick, okay.
I don't know the I and O.
Peggy, you were, that was taken care of by Chris?
Well, I was going to say
Hey,
something that I.
If you do, come on up to the mic.
But I'll wait till after. I-
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, that's all the public comment cards I have. Okay, we will move along to number I. Councilman Wyrick, you,
Well, the reason I pulled it was there's a number of comments that we've received from the public, both very strongly in support of the notification letter and some criticism from members of the agricultural community about the nature of the letter. So I thought it was appropriate that we hear from both sides and decide what to do.
okay, any questions from council?
I just
before
asked
we
that-
open it?
I just asked that we keep it to 3 minutes
Okay,
and no presentations or things of that nature, no surprises.
right. Okay, we have Susan Williamson. You are up, and Peggy, is this your topic? Okay, you're on deck.
I hope this isn't too much of a surprise for you. It's just a picture of pesticide being sprayed. So, hello, my name's Sue Williamson, and I live in Ojai, and I'm just speaking in favor of notification. I ride my bike a lot, and I've had very bad, weird effects from sprays, from toxic poisoning in Ojai when I ride my bike, particularly when I come downtown and this area, actually, which was sort of surprising. And I've had some friends that have died of cancer in Ojai that have said they lived in the East End and they've been sprayed a lot, and they were very convinced that the reason they died and got cancer was from the toxic poisoning. And I think that the least, absolute least, the farmers can do is to inform us so that I do not ride my bike around town after there's been spraying and I get poisoned. And it's just very simple. It's such a no-brainer. I don't get why that cannot be done. It's just a first step to hopefully getting farmers to begin to see the light and try alternatives, which actually they are legally required to do, apparently, and they have not been doing. So I'm just speaking in favor of that. I hope you will consider our health and the health of our community when you make your decision.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Peggy?
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor Johnston and other members of the Ojai City Council and City Manager James Vega. I'm going to read a letter. I was going to send it to you and I didn't have time, and it'll save time if I just read it. I wish to express my gratitude to the City Manager James Vega and the City Council for recommending that staff be directed to send a letter on behalf of the City of Ojai requesting the County of Ventura Agricultural Commission require advance public notice prior to pesticide application, along with reporting on expected application locations. It was concerning to me that in addition to the known carcinogen glyphosate being sprayed on the orchards in the east end of Ojai, that some growers are also spraying danitol, that's fenpropyfrine, and delegate spinatorum, which are both found to be neurotoxic to mammals. Danitol toxicity can result in tremors, ataxia, decreased spontaneous motor activity, clonic convulsions, increased salivation and lacrimation, fibrillation, and hypersensitivity. And delegate spinatorum has been found to produce vacuolation of cells as well as degenerative and regenerative, as well as inflammatory changes in cells of the adrenal glands, liver, lymphatic tissues, reproductive tissues, kidney, thyroid, stomach, lung, and skeletal muscles. It's also concerning to me that John Criss, the executive director of the Farm Bureau, found Mr. Vega's request, quote, appalling for several reasons, and urged the City Council to remove this item from the consent calendar. It's hard to comprehend how it ever became acceptable to spray orchards with these toxic chemicals in the first place, but it's unconscionable to fail to give residents of the valley so much as fair warning to leave when they're going to be doused with them. Thank you for your insistence that will be given advance warning prior to pesticide application. Thank you. And since I still have a little bit of time, I would just say that my public comment was that I wish everybody would take an introductory biology course. It would save a lot of time. These meetings would be much shorter. We wouldn't even be discussing some of the things that we're discussing because it's so straightforward that you don't add things to the environment that are toxic to life, things that we don't have evolved mechanisms to deal with in our physiological systems. I'm really appreciative of your taking this matter seriously, and I hope we can count on you to ensure that we're given advance notice. Thank you.
Okay, Emily Ayala with Jim Finch on deck.
Good evening. Thank you for letting us speak. I already wrote you a letter about how I feel on this issue. This is an agricultural valley, and we're certainly not trying to poison anyone. While I do appreciate people caring about our environment, the people that have been organizing the town hall and lots of people on Facebook and Twitter, et cetera, a lot of it to me seems misguided. And certainly not inclusive of the farmers. Sort of last minute, the farmers were invited to the town hall. We weren't invited to help organize the town hall or in any of the previous discussions before the meeting. We are not absentee landowners in this valley. All farms in the Ojai Valley are family owned. They're not owned by big corporations. I do feel that if this is indeed a health crisis of some sort, we would have someone from Community Memorial, Seaview, one of the big doctor groups here if it was a real concern. I don't see that it is a real concern. I'm concerned about how, if people want advance notice, how that will work. A lot of farmers don't use Facebook, Twitter, yada yada. 72 hours advanced warning, when a lot of what we do as farmers depends entirely on what temperature it is when we wake up. Is the wind blowing? Did a pipe break at night? How cold is it going to get? We're at the whims of Mother Nature. We do have a schedule for spraying for the Asian citrus psyllid, which is public information. It's on the Ventura County Farm Bureau Facebook page. So there is 2-3 week windows throughout the year that we spray for ACP. And the Ojai Valley, our zone numbers are in the 40s. You can look on the maps and see when we're spraying. Right now is a spray period. If people are concerned, they shouldn't be biking in the East End or where they hear tractors running. In the last several days, we've had people driving down private property in the East End and saying, "Are you spraying?" And it's just creating a breakdown of our society. People should not be trespassing onto other people's properties, taking soil samples, and just, you know, it's very frustrating to see this breakdown in society over people being scared, and it bothers me. We should talk to one another. Neighbors should talk to neighbors. This is Ojai, not LA. So that's all I have to say, plus what I wrote in my letter. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Emily. Jim, you're up with Dr. Gould. You're on deck.
I will ask this. Good evening, members of the council. My name is Jim Finch. I'm a third-generation Ojai farmer. I live here in Ojai. I've raised my family in Ojai, amongst the groves, right in the grove. I am a family farmer. Ojai is the one spot in this county where we do not have any insurance companies or corporate farms present. We are 100% family farmers. We are all sustainable family farmers. I had hoped my daughter would take over. She is currently studying ag at UC Davis. I love farming. I love growing healthy foods, citrus and avocados. In the past, I used to grow blueberries, but unfortunately that has been exported now. I can't compete with Chile, Peru, and Argentina. I am a steward of my land, yet I feel like a criminal now at times. That is sad. Now to the issue at hand, your notification. Excuse me. If you think that you're asking for a 72-hour notice will lead to a nice system of one notification equals one application, you're wrong. I think you will get a 2x or 4x amount of notifications. We don't know what the weather will work or how the weather will work or what might break down. So we will notify you for every day in the proximity. While I am against this in general, windows of applications would be a more reasonable thing, 72, 96 hours for one application. This allows for weather, to the vagaries of weather or breakdowns or, as Emily mentioned, pipelines. Otherwise, if it's one notification for one day, Thursday afternoon we will be notifying heavily, probably for the entire following week. For the same ranch. Will we be applying it every day? No, but we will be notifying. And why do I say Thursday afternoon? Because when you take 72 hours, you take a weekend in there also, you're going to need to do it on Thursday to catch Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. You can only wait until Tuesday to catch Thursday and Friday. So that's why I say most will be done on Thursday. I encourage you to vote no on the current proposal. Be wary of the law of unintended consequences, because I think the path that Ojai is headed down with agriculture, it could be far-reaching. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Dr. Gould? With Patty, if you're out there, you're on deck.
My name is Dr. Richard Gould, and I've been in Ojai since 1972. I did my medical training at the Ventura County Medical Hospital. I was a resident there for 2 years, and I came to know Ojai, and I moved here then. I have lived in the orange groves two parts of my life, from 1980 to 89, and then about 2010 to now. I was married to my office nurse, Cindy, and we were both healthy when we started. And Elgina Lane has a lot of orange trees near us. Let me show you a picture of that. This is by the swimming pool. The trees are just right there. We told the workers, don't pick, we like to look at the oranges. It was fun. We moved away from there, went to Rancho Matilaha, and then came back to the East End, just a few blocks from where I was before. I'm on Fordyce Road now. In 1996, I came down with symptoms of Parkinson's. I'd been very healthy up to that time, and I just started to get to trip and fall and have problems working with my legs. So I've been dealing with Parkinson's for 27 years or so, and I'm managing, and it's a pain in the neck, but I do everything. But when we was in Fordyce Road for about 3 years, my wife began to have symptoms. She had numbness in her mouth, and then it spread to her body, and she had amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. That's Lou Gehrig's disease. She lost the ability to ride her horse. She couldn't walk, and she couldn't talk, and she couldn't move. It was very sad. It was terrible. I didn't relate the pesticides to these diseases, but my eyes have been opened. There's a lot of harm in it. The oath that doctors take when they become practicing is to do no harm. And I think there's a lot of evidence that harm is being done. So I think the notification is a step in a process that'll have to be simplified and worked out. But for people that are on bicycles, people that are walking, the heart help walks Dr. Fulver has every year, go right past my house and past the orchards. And the children at the 2 schools are being sprayed. So I'm in favor of using the notification, maybe have something about the wind and have it, the way fires are, burn permits are given on certain days. If it's not windy, then you get it okay by somebody who knows.
Okay. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you for
Appreciate
listening.
it. Patty, with Rebecca, you're on deck.
So, thank you for hearing our concerns this evening. We are very concerned about the ongoing use of the pesticides, the neonicotinoids, and the glyphosate, and the pyrethroids on the orchards in the East End. The toxic pesticides are often being used in residential areas and school zones without any prior notification. The recent town hall meeting, as you know, on September 28th, demonstrated the interest and need for accurate information about pesticide use in our community. This letter that I sent you, which documents the local use of toxic pesticides and herbicides, raises concerns about the possible health impacts on Ojai residents and water supplies, ecosystems, including pollinators, from the best informational sources available. Much of the residential area in the East End of Ojai is zoned rural exclusive. There is also land zoned agricultural right next to and surrounding rural exclusive area. The purpose of RE zone, rural exclusive, is, quote, to provide for and maintain rural residential areas in conjunction with horticultural activities and to provide for a limited range of service and institutional uses which are compatible and complementary to rural residential communities. The ongoing exposure to pesticides from nearby orchards is not compatible with and complementary to maintaining rural residential communities. Residents have a need to know when pesticides are being applied in their neighborhoods and around schools. So I have several, about 3 maps in here. You can see how the concentration of the commercial growers in the East End. is quite extensive. It's near the residential and just right there in the residential neighborhoods and near the schools. And the next map that you can see, you can see the concentration for the Ojai Valley. The pesticide use data shows that we are on the top 75th percentile for pesticide use. There's so much more to this letter. So I'm just going to go ahead and say that I am sure that it's obvious with all this information that you can look over and study that we need to know. The public has a right to know when things are going to be sprayed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Patty.
Mr. Mayor, may I just say something? Patty, wait. I think it's just important to point out that, Patty, I think you've been working on this for 20 years.
Actually, only 11.
Only 11. It just feels like a long time.
Seems like 20,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
It seems like 20, but it's only 11.
Yeah, and I know that you're a serious researcher, and I really appreciate the information you've provided. Thank you.
Mayor, I have one question
Thank
for
you.
Patty. Patty, have you taken all this information to the county?
I
How many, roughly how many times have you presented before them? How many times have you gone to the Ag Commission with all this information?
To the Ag Commissioner himself, I've talked with Supervisor Bennett, and we have sent information to the Ag Commissioner. The specific information that we have now seems to be so obvious that we need to do something in order to protect the residents of Ojai. So I have talked with the county many, many times, especially about glyphosate use, and the reply that I got was, well, if the EPA hasn't deemed it a carcinogen, then we can't really change what we're doing right now. So now we know that glyphosate has been deemed a carcinogen. We don't want to wait any longer and have more people get sick in our Ojai Valley. We should do something now. And I understand that the growers are in a tough spot. They're used to doing things a certain way. Sometimes we need to change. We need to look at what we're doing and make sure that we're not hurting our neighbors. And they have a lot of tools. There are funds available for transitioning off of the toxic chemicals, and we want to help support that. We want to find those grant monies for them and not make them feel like we're against them, but they got to realize that what they're doing to the people is harming us.
Thank you, Patty. Rebecca, you're up with Joseph Gilbert on deck.
Actera, danitol, temectin, neonicotinoids, pyrethroids. I had never heard of any of these until one of them drifted over my house and made my family sick. These are all toxic synthetic chemicals. They are promoted as safe despite scientific evidence of their harm to health and the environment. Over 200 peer-reviewed studies have been done that link synthetic pesticide spraying to harmful and sometimes fatal health effects. This is not hysteria. This is science. I hear you, conventional farmers, that you don't want to be told how to run your business. You say that you adhere to rigorous regulatory requirements to protect residents and the environment from effects of pesticide applications, but we continue to experience a toxic drift. We continue to find piles of dead bees at our doorstep. We continue to get sick. I was surprised in my research recently to find that Roundup, which is heavily sprayed in Ojai, is proven to cause damage to embryonic umbilical cord cells. When I was 12 weeks pregnant with my daughter, she was diagnosed with a single umbilical artery, a birth defect to her umbilical cord. Exactly one of the hazards listed on the Power Max label. She had a 1 in 3 chance of not making it or being severely malformed. Miraculously, my daughter was born healthy, but she and I have chemical sensitivity. When other people and families are not irritated by certain synthetic chemicals, we get rashes and other illnesses. My daughter has wound up regularly in the ER, gasping for air with an inflamed throat. She has had to learn to live with regular breathing treatments. My daughter and I are like a barometer for synthetic chemicals. We can feel it on our skin, our throat, our eyes. On June 6th, an aerial helicopter flew over our house and sprayed a citrus farm nearby. Shortly after, we started to sneeze. Our eyes became watery and itchy. Both of our small children, now ages 2 and 5, started coughing. We realized that whatever the helicopter had sprayed had drifted onto our property. After waiting several hours for the allergic reaction we were having to stop, our coughing worsened, and we felt we had no choice but to leave with our kids. Once we were out of Ojai, the reaction we all had immediately stopped, but my daughter came down with a cough that persisted for a month, and on top of that, our bees died. Almost 20 years ago, 20 kids in Oxnard were poisoned at their school and taken to the ER from the drift of toxic synthetic chemicals sprayed on a nearby farm. Do you know what regulations changed or became enforced in those 20 years since that happened? None. None. Nothing has changed in 20 years to prevent this from happening here or to prevent it from happening again. I'm here to tell you that it's already happening here and that we and our children are suffering from chronic exposure to these chemicals. It's disconcerting to me that our farmers are not taking these concerns seriously. It means that these unsafe practices will continue. We've been brushed off as being hysterical and crazy, but the only crazy thing I can see is doing nothing and expecting a different result. In 20 years, will we look back at this as our silent spring? My last comment is it's time that we put the health of our kids as a priority above farmers who have proven unwilling to consider our health or listen to anything from local regenerative experts who have been inviting them to this conversation for decades. In their fear of the latest and greatest citrus disease, they've stopped taking into account the effect of their for-profit business and what it has on our health. Over 300 people in our community have signed a petition right over here, and we believe that we have the right to know when these toxic synthetic chemicals will be sprayed, whether it be from a hand sprayer, a helicopter sprayer, a World War II era fan sprayer, or any sprayer for that matter. We need to know when we'll be sprayed, what will be sprayed, so that we can make safe, informed choices for our family, and that's what this all comes down to.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you. We request notification.
Joseph, you're up, and Adam Vega, you're on deck.
Okay, my name is Joseph Gilbert. I live in Miners Oaks. These are more pictures of spraying. Look, when I was in high school, I took an advanced biology course, and I got the highest average out of 2,200 people there. And one thing I learned is you don't put toxins in your environment and expect things not to get poisoned. It's not just the target. It has unintended consequences. The pollinators, the insects we depend on to produce the food we eat get poisoned by neonics is what they call it. You just have to, look, science means knowing, and conscience means with knowing. If you don't have, if you reject what you know, or you're afraid to change because you'd have to change your behavior and you just want to pretend like what you know isn't true because it's too much trouble to change, then what hope is there for you? You have to be willing to change your ways when what you know changes. When you learn something new that demands that you change, you have to be willing to go along with it. And we don't want to get poisoned in this town. Yes. And I'm sure that you don't want to poison us either. So do the right thing. And when you learn something new, act accordingly. Don't just say, well, we'll just keep doing the same thing. No, you can't keep doing the same thing. It doesn't work. People are getting sick. Do the right thing here. I don't know what to tell you. You just have to educate yourself, and you have to learn some new things. You don't spread poisons around, and the wind trespasses, people trespass on the farms to find out what they're doing. The wind trespasses everywhere. So I don't know what else to say. We'll be watching to see what happens.
Okay, we have one more, Adam.
Good afternoon, Mayor, City Council, staff, and Sheriff. Thank you for having me here tonight. My name is Adam Vega. I'm a community organizer for the Ventura County Coalition Advocating Pesticide Safety. I just want to touch on some of the points that were spoken about tonight. There was discussing of the breakdown that we're seeing in society and the hysteria that this has caused. This is not unprovoked and is not coming from out of the blue. This is the local repercussions of the inadequate and broken system that we have at the state. There was some mention about, weather variability and the issues attributed to, not knowing the wind or the rain or the sun. There's some things called farmers' almanacs, and if we're having an issue with those weather variabilities now, let's kind of imagine what that's going to look as these variabilities increase due to climate change. So the current model that we have is one that's extractive. We're not working with nature, instead against it. And, there's a lot of emotion and tensions are high, but we're here to help the growers. We want to help them get off the pesticide treadmill, because while those farms are family owned, we know that these third-party applicators are it's big ag pesticides. The Ventura County Public Health Director and the Executive Officer are well aware of this issue. They called a special meeting with the County Agricultural Commissioner, Ed Williams. I've been meeting with him for the past year, quarterly, waiting to meet for our third meeting. And I just want to bring to light a couple things that many people may hide behind. There was a Ventura County grand jury report that was recently put out due to this very issue. I'd highly advise you to take that report with a grain of salt. The reason why it was promoted was because the actions of me and my group for the past year. And when you ask Patty, how often she's engaged with the Agricultural Commissioner, I can say that she has. She's been there with those meetings. But the difficulty in doing that is insurmountable. There were issues with us even being able to get a meeting. Henry Gonzalez, the ex-agricultural commissioner, we tried to get in touch with him for the last year. He went off to Monterey County before he ever met with us. And funny thing, when we talk about notifications, they have 72-hour notification in Monterey County. So we can have that here at least. There's two things that I want to touch on. There's this really good report comes out from UCLA. The Ventura County Grand Jury report did not cite this as a resource. In it, it discusses the fact that there are potential violations to CEQA occurring for the fact that we're not considering alternatives and not taking into cumulative effect. I was a student at Oxnard High School when some of the gross negligences in Title VI civil rights violations were occurring, and I was part of this UC A&R project with DPR creating a roadmap for integrated pest management. That is the solution to the problem. I'd strongly advise you to check out the work of Associates Insectary, a grower-owned beneficial insect hub right here in Santa Paula, and even take into account things that have worked in different areas with agriculture, conservation districts. There are many solutions. We just need to come together and figure out how to implement those. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Gilbert. Yeah, happy fingers. Okay. That's all the cards I have, so we'll
There's
bring
a
it.
raised hand.
Nick.
Nick.
His card was there. Nick wanted to.
Oh.
speak on this. So,
You want to come?
His
card
was in
he was a general and he
yeah,
moved it to
okay,
now.
sorry. Come on up, Nick. Nothing personal, just I'm old. Yeah. Yeah.
No. Except his phone just rang.
My name is Nicholas Ojai. Thank you for considering this letter to the county. Just quick personal, I hope I can do this in a minute. 5 years ago, I was Hodgkin's lymphoma, 3rd stage, sicker than I'd ever been in all my life. Thankfully, I got free of it through a series of alternative methods, which I don't have to detail. I was walking when I could walk up to, in my recovery, in front of the driveway of my neighbor, who I had taken photographs of the cans and the people spraying right just 50 feet over my fence. And it was glyphosate. That was the first time, maybe I heard it from Patty just before, but then, oh, glyphosate, oh, that's it, with Roundup on it. The spraying right up to the windows of a little guest house that my neighbor had rented to a fellow for 10 years. He was getting sick. I didn't hear from him. He's moved on. My neighbor across the way, Dr. Stroberg, has non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and he's still dealing with it. he was swearing by all the insects, the sprays, and it wasn't doing anything. I think he's changed his mind. Jim Churchill, who has his tangerines right across the street, said that just as the farmer lady who came up this evening, you can't really tell which day it's going to be. You really can't tell. And I will just finish by reading this brief letter and giving it to you. Dear Mayor Johnston and members of the Ojai City Council and City Manager James Vega, don't you think it's time to put the county and the state authorities on notice who regulate the spraying of known toxic chemicals in the Ojai Valley? Show your support for a really healthy citizenry before we finally transition the valley's agriculture to a regenerative form of ag. Products we want to know exactly when and where the toxic application is taking place. That's what we really need to know. That's going to take, I understand the schedule for spraying the toxic chemicals depends on factors that make it difficult to know exactly when. Property owners to get a 24-hour notice from the property owners and or the company doing the spraying might at least do something so that you can leave, so you don't have to be breathing it in almost as it comes across the fence. It's really, we're all educated here, or fancies ourselves to be educated, but it's really kind of amazing to think that we are spraying poisons that we know are poisonous on the food that we're being asked to eat. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Okay. Are there any other cards that I may have misfiled? Okay. We'll take it back to Council Bill.
Sure. Couple of comments. One is, I think we all accept the principle of notification. We all accept the principle that we ought to find a way to do this better and beyond the standards supplied by the county and the state California Code of Regulations. I think we all accept that. I'll give you an example of why I think our goal should be to do better than what is legally required by either the state or the county. I looked up the California Code of Regulations for pesticides used near schools and daycare facilities. There's two types of restriction distances, 1/4 mile and 25 feet, which blew me away a bit. And then 30 field fumigations or 36-hour notification. There's other exemptions and things. I think we all want to do better than that. And my concern is to direct this to the county could end up being a black hole in terms of serving the goal that we want to achieve here. And what I'm concerned about is that what I've heard from the farming community today, in testimony here, is that they're willing to participate, I think I'm hearing, they're willing to participate in working out a notification protocol that does exceed what's required currently by the county and the California Code of Regulations. And I would hope that since we are one, we are one community in the Ojai Valley and the R family, locally owned farmers, we have an opportunity. I think if we do the right kind of outreach and the right kind of organized effort to achieve a template for things like notification beyond what is currently required by the county. I fear that if we feel like we've satisfied ourselves by sending this letter with specifics like 72 hours and expect the County Board of Supervisors or the County Ag Commission to operate in some sort of responsive way, as opposed to maybe thinking about how to, not approach this in a way that sets our family-owned farms, our community-owned farms as something separate, but maybe take them up on what I hear, I'm hoping I'm hearing right, is an offer to sit down and come up with some worked out solutions that achieve the same end. within our community and set up an example for the rest of the county to consider. So I guess I'm a little concerned about the whole assumption that the way to approach this, which is a very important issue, I completely agree, by just turning it over to, hey, county, you do it. Not a lot of success in our doing that. We might do better coming up with a voluntary protocol. The city could help be doing publicity with our resources. Maybe that's a better course to take. It serves the same end. Those are my thoughts.
May I go next? Yeah. I appreciate what Councilmember Bill Wyrick just stated. I think we need to do that, but I think we need to do both. The letter to the county is very thorough and informative. It is a reasonable request for information. I think it's important to involve the county, to give the county notice. I agree that it's obvious that there is a breakdown in communication, and I don't know whose fault that is, but I feel strongly that Emily and Jim, I forget Jim's last, Emily and Jim Finch, and the others who oppose this kind of the letter to the county, I think you need to demonstrate willingness to sit down. I mean, I am disappointed that you did not attend the town hall meeting, because my understanding was that was going to be a friendly, productive, educational opportunity for dialogue. I did. You were there, Jim? I was there. Okay, good. I'm happy to hear that. But there will be a videotape for those who missed it. It'll be readily available. And I mean, it does sadden me that for a long time, Ojai, I've lived here almost 64 years in the valley. We lived in an orange orchard when we came here. So it saddens me to hear the longtime farmers that this is, seen as us being the people that are questioning the pesticide application, that the routines that have been in place for decades, that they're questioning this. The language in John Christ's letter, in my opinion, was hostile. It was not a productive letter open to friendly dialogue. It was a very hostile letter, and I don't know what prompted him to do that. What I would like to do is send the letter as is, but add some wording rather than 72 hours window of application. I think that's reasonable. And with today's technology, the superintendent of schools can notify parents, 1,000 parents.
To the council.
Yeah.
We're deliberating.
There's no reason why with today's technology and everybody having cell phones that people could not be given proper notification.
Okay, so your suggestion is what, to add or to substitute window of?
Yeah, we can put 72 hours or a reasonable window of time. We can make the letter more reasonable if that's what's needed. But the letter, I'm adamant that the letter needs to be sent to the county. Okay. And we also need to absolutely do what Councilmember Wyrick suggested. We need to work both ways.
Okay. Randy?
Go ahead.
Wow, this is a really difficult issue, because even though these particular farms and ranches aren't inside the city limits, we take a lot of responsibility here. I mean, we could easily say the simple answer from this council standpoint is we don't get to decide that. All we can do is send a letter to somebody to say, hey, guys that do decide that, do something about it. It's a very difficult situation because there's clearly a problem. And I want to start out by saying that to Jim and Emily and to the rest of the farmers in the East End community, the stress that is there in citrus farming right now does not go unnoticed by at least this council member, and I know collectively as a council we understand the pitfalls that are going on, from the channel keeper case to costs to margins being smaller. It's very difficult. We also have to balance this entire situation with the realities of the economics, that it would be a very bad situation if the valley lost its farming community. because those fields provide an important service for our environment. As much as the spraying might be bad, they're important for fire buffers, they're important for a lot of other reasons, and it's not property that we want to see developed. We like it much better as farming area. We like it as farming space. So how do we match this problem with the spraying and our future of how we're going to handle this as a community? And one thing when I look inside of this, it's hard because the farmers have to trust the government and the regulations that are coming down for what they can or cannot spray. I have no belief in me whatsoever that if Jim and Emily and the rest of the farmers believed that this was causing a harm to the community, that they would be the first ones to stop doing it. There's no doubt in my mind that is true, that the economics don't overpower, that they believe there's a real problem. But they are being guided by the hands of regulators who are telling them that this is okay, from the county to the state to the various methods that go into regulating this. And my problem is that we're part of those trusting parties. We're part of the parties you're supposed to trust. We're the government. We sit here as a governmental entity. But the government has screwed this up so many times, from Roundup to talcum powder to cigarettes to asbestos to fracking to the Santa Susana Field Laboratory to the asthma that is spiking on the Oxnard Plain like nobody's business, that I can't trust the government to be right on this. So the farmers are trusting the government, but I don't know if I can. And I don't like that position that puts us in. I don't like where we're going. And if you read this UCLA report that came out that Mr. Vega showed, I had read that earlier. It made it very clear that they did an in-depth study saying, is the problem with the local county agricultural commissioners not implementing rules that are designed to fix this exact problem? And what they found was, yes, they took a deep dive into the files of each ag commissioner's office, and when they saw the permits and they saw the spraying applications that were there, there was not the robust discussion about alternatives that are safer that was supposed to be there. And since then, there's been some legal activity. There's been some moves that the state has made. So we do see this moving in that direction. So I think it's important that we help facilitate our county in getting that review done. I don't know. The notice period isn't, to me, if the product is causing harm, what the heck difference does 72 hours make? If it's causing cancer, 3 days notice isn't going to help. What we need to know is whether or not the legal requirements of vetting, mitigating, other mitigating substances that can do the same thing or are better for the environment or anything that might be better used is getting done, because the studies are showing us that ag commissioners aren't looking into that. I think the letter needs to say that. Is there a better way to do this, and can we work together rather than say, hey, notice is here, notice isn't here? So I think this letter should include a robust statement saying follow the law, do the research you're required to do, Ag Commissioner, and tell us why this is the only product that's going to be used here, because it has to be for some reason. There's not a better product to be used. And once we've made that determination, then we can say, all right, what is the effect having on our community, our neighbors, and everyone else? And if it's something that we can agree needs to be used, let's start there. Because if it doesn't need to be, let's stop there. But if it has to be used, then let's put an implementation plan in that can work with everyone to get the best notifications out. And if it means there's a 3-week notice period, but the morning before you spray, an email goes out to everybody and hits everybody that says that you're spraying, then at least that's something.
Pull it back to the council as far as what are you suggesting
I agree. I think there needs to be a modification in the letter that specifically asks for what we really want is a notice period. I don't care about. What I care about is our ag commissioner making sure that this is the best and least impactful on the environment and human health methodology for achieving the same goal.
Randy.
So I would agree 100% with that, Ryan. I think that's a better letter to send. One of the concerns I have are, again, these actions of and the unintended consequences of it. For instance, someone in the state said that every city in the state of California has to have districts and has to have elected officials. So we're blackmailed into paying someone $30,000 for that. It was a unintended consequence of a poorly written bill. Tonight we're going to debate portable vendors in town, which are going to could have a significant impact on this community. Again, someone decided that they needed to write a law, and a group of people said, yeah, we kind of agree with that, and as a result of it, we're going to suffer from it, or we could suffer from it. So if any of you have if any, I don't know if any of you have applied pesticides, I have. There are certain laws regarding drift. There are certain laws regarding when you can spray and cannot spray, and one of those is wind. So I understand why the farmer is saying, if I notified you today that I'm going to spray 3 days from now, and then 3 days come up and we've got Santa Ana's, I can't spray. So I understand what they're trying to say is we're relying on a day-to-day moment to make this action. I get that side of it, and I understand that. I'm not against the 72. I could say that personally. I'm not against it, but I just don't know if that's the win. I think the better win is a conversation in this valley between the farm community and the rest of us. I believe that's where it should start. And as much as I think this forum at the school, I don't have a sense that I didn't attend. I've heard some comments on it from both sides. I don't think it was set up properly. I don't think there was a forum representing all sides of this discussion. There was a forum set up on a specific side of it. So I'd like to see more of those. I think that's the way to go. Sending this letter, and once again, it's the same as I feel about Creek Road. We're going to send something to the county, and the county is going to look at us and say, okay, thank you. Okay. And the county's going to do what they need to do or what they want to do. Okay. So I think a more powerful letter stating what Ryan said, maybe engaging this young man who's part of this coalition that seems to be on the ball, and we put a better letter together and bring it back. That's where I'm at right now.
Are you volunteering to do that?
Okay, now it's my turn to make a comment.
Okay.
I go last, and then we'll take another round if
yeah,
but
I have another.
This started when Laura Ward from the newspaper said she was going to send a letter, and she wanted to know what is being sprayed, how much of it is being sprayed, when is it being sprayed, and is it possible to get some kind of notice. And then I believe,
agree with that.
Right, but at that point, Randy, you suggested that the council send the letter. We don't have any more authority in any of this than that newspaper, maybe even some less, because the press has a certain advantage for getting information that, we are just sort of wading into this thing. What I agreed with what was originally being asked. I mean, what's wrong with knowing what's being sprayed, where's it being sprayed, how much of it's being sprayed, and give me a chance to get out of town? Because frankly, I think notice does help. I think notice at least lets people make a choice to try to move, to escape briefly. But it isn't going to solve the problem. But the problem is not controlled even by the county. We're talking, I think, probably to the wrong person or wrong group. The county does not establish the laws for farming and for pesticide and agriculture. The ag commissioner, I believe, is a state employee. I could be wrong on that, but I believe that there's a very close connection. It sounds to me like the big question is there a practical, nobody seems to think that it's a bad idea to tell people what's happening so they can make a choice. The question is how do you do it, and is it practical to do it? If the county of Monterey has some kind of a system, my suggestion is that maybe Ryan and Randy, if you get together with the city manager and find out how it's done elsewhere and invite some of the farmers in like Jim and Emily and say, can we make this work? And then we can decide what we go from there. We can send a letter asking for the information. Maybe we get it, maybe we don't, but it's not going to address what we really seem to want to know is how do you let people know what's going on? Because it's legal. And that doesn't make it smart, but if it's legal, those people who have the right to do a certain thing, matter of economics, I guess, will do it to the max. Others will try to come up with a new way of doing things. But I'm sure if there was a reasonable alternative, that the farmers would be the first to want to apply it because they're trying to survive. On the other hand, maybe things like the Asian citrus psyllid, or however you pronounce that, Asiatics, has created a problem for all of us, that maybe redoubling our effort to beat the insect is going to end up killing off the two-legged people that are running around the valley. I mean, it's a tough thing, but we are not in a position to do anything other than to ask the question. So we got to decide what question we're going to ask and of whom, if we're going to get this done. Or let Laura go ahead and do what she was going to do anyway, which maybe would have solved the whole problem.
So, Mayor, just a quick response. The facility did wipe out the industry in Florida. It will wipe out the industry here in California. It's that simple. It's a pest that is just detrimental to citrus, period. So, and all we can do is fight it and fight it and fight it and do the best we can with it. Somewhere down the line, someone's going to recognize that and say, what's the alternative? Before that, though, I would be more than willing to sit with any other council person. I'd be willing to meet with this young man. I'd be willing to meet with Jim and a couple other farmers. And I'd like to put a date certain that we come back to council by the second meeting in November, and we get this done.
Okay, is that a motion? I'll second it.
I don't know if there's going to be a second meeting in
Yeah,
November.
the second meeting was canceled on the.
That would be the
first
next one.
meeting in
You want to be here for
So
Thanksgiving?
we'll do the first meeting in November, because I have nothing more to do with my time. But this is important.
We could do the first meeting in December, could be
This
an
is-
option.
First meeting.
No, because I think what's going to happen is we're going to push this down the road. Let's
meeting in November?
do it.
Yeah.
If we're going to do it,
Okay.
let's do it.
Okay, first meeting in November.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
I'll second the motion.
Well, my motion, if I may make
Is that
one.
a
is-
motion, Randy?
I seconded it already, but
Okay,
we'll
sorry.
have 2 seconds if
I'm
you
sorry.
like.
Well, then I'm asking to amend the motion to include that we request that all feasible alternatives or mitigation measures have been analyzed, and that what they're spraying in our valley is consistent, that there are no other feasible or alternatives or other mitigation measures that are available.
We'll come
So-
back with whatever you want to
Well,
ask.
that's fine. All I'm going to say is a study like that is going to take longer than 2 weeks that we have to draft a letter. So I don't want to bring any hopes up. But what needs to be, that seriously needs to be done in this community. We need to know the when, what, why, and how of pesticide use, and I agree with that. That's not going to happen in 2 weeks. That's more than likely a study, if we could bring in UCLA, UC Santa Barbara. It's something that needs to be done, and it needs to be done by someone obviously smarter than us. But I would agree
I'm
to
hoping
do
the
that.
county already did it.
I would.
In-
I don't think the county has studied it.
Well, then let's find that out, right?
We
Let's
will,
find out
but
the
that could be
answer.
part of, Ryan, if you're going to work with me on it, I'm more than willing to look at
Inquiry
that
to the
aspect.
motion maker?
Okay.
Yes.
Inquiry to the motion maker.
Yeah, Bill.
This would be inclusive of reaching out to the ag community about possibilities for voluntary protocols which exceed county regulations and exceed state regulations?
Absolutely. I think everything should be on the table.
All right.
Okay. I just want to make sure that all council members did read the changes in the letter. They were minimal and they were in bold, but they were very important. And if you haven't read them, I just want to make sure that the changes did address many of your concerns. So if I may read just for 1 minute, the city this is in bold, the third paragraph down, the city wants the county to provide greater collaboration with residents of the city and include working with state and county agencies to determine if the consequences of widespread repeated application of pesticides could have negative impacts on our air and water quality in the Ojai Valley. And then further down, we added to notice of aerial pesticide application, we added the word "and ground." And then while we were working on this letter with our city manager, Patty Pagelen received a letter, and this is in the last paragraph, and it states, "The city is in contact with Val Dulcini, Acting Director of the Department of Pesticide Regulation, which is the California Environmental Protection Agency, and plan to meet this fall about transitioning to safer and less toxic alternatives, including integrated pest management practices. The city looks forward to collaborating with all partners, including the county, to address these issues. So I don't know if Patty has received a response, but the people at the top are paying attention. We are not the only city expressing this concern. There was a meeting in New York, and among maybe, I can't remember exactly, but it was like the top agricultural commissioners of all the states and people, it was a meeting where regenerative agriculture was the second top priority, which means ultimately, you've heard the expression, the cure is worse than the disease. That's what we have going on here in Ojai. When you have depleted soil that has been monocultured for decades, this is the end result of that. And we in Ojai, we have experts like Dr. David White, there are plenty of people who are knowledgeable about regenerative agriculture, and if the farmers would sit down at the table with them, my understanding is that there's grants, there are ways to transition. In some countries in Europe, these pesticides that are common here are banned. So this is a serious issue, and I'm glad this council is taking it seriously.
So, Mayor, ultimately, Sousa, we will utilize this format, this structure here, and take it into consideration. Again, what we want to be able to send the county is something that has, I believe, and Ryan believes, and Bill believes, I think the mayor believes, substantially a little more meat on it. And again, I think it's fair that we include the community in this discussion, and we get this done. There's a term called an integrated pest management plan. Am I correct, Kathy, in that?
Yes.
Don't all agriculture users of pesticides have to have an integrated plan? So these gentlemen have one. These women have them. These farmers in our community have them. Is it the best knowledge available today? I'm not sure about that. That's what we need to look at and to look for. So again, give us 2 weeks or 3 weeks if that's what we're looking for. Don't leave here without leaving us a card or a name, and let's hop on it. And that's where so let's move this to the first council meeting and table this to the next first council meeting in November.
Okay.
Okay, is that an agreement between
Sure.
the two?
Yeah.
Okay, so. Okay, that will be the order. Yeah, thank you guys for doing that. It seems to me that this acting director of the Department of Pesticide Regulation, the Environmental Protection Agency, is the person to be talking to. The regulations do
He's eager
not.
to come here. He's eager.
The alternative is what Bill has suggested, and what it sounded like Jim and Emily were open to, is the conversation about what are the options? What can they do? It doesn't have to be what the minimum standard.
Right. Well, the other thing, Mayor, too, is you can send this letter not just to the county, you can send it to every individual that needs to understand the plight of Ojai and the plight of California and the plight of America. Yeah. And who knows, maybe we're the starting point.
Okay. That,
as usual.
Okay, that concludes that item.
Do we need a vote?
We now are, what?
Without objection.
No objection.
Okay.
Since there's a time certain.
Okay, is there an objection?
No objection if there's time certain.
Okay, and the time certain is the first
Yes.
meeting in November. That's clear with
Okay,
everybody.
and before we move on, I just want to call your attention. Rebecca
I think-
Tickell is the co-author of this wonderful book with her husband Josh Tickell. Highly recommended as a Christmas gift or whatever. And your movie's coming out in January, right?
Yeah.
Screening in Ojai to talk about regenerative agriculture and how it can save our valley and America.
Yeah, it's excellent.
Well, maybe in that movie we'll include something about veterans and bringing them into this management system of regeneration, because we need to help them regenerate.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah. I'll bring it
Thank
back to
you.
the table
Thank
here.
you, Alan.
We are now on item number.
We're regenerating to number 2.
Yeah, we're regenerating number 2. Introduction of ordinance amending the Ojai Municipal Code Title 9, adoption of the building code. Is that right?
Yep.
Do we have any cards on that one?
Exhibits will not be returned.
2? 1.
Where are we on the building code?
Yeah, number 2.
Okay.
Okay.
Staff report.
We'll give everybody a chance to get on. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
And
Dr. Gold was so brave.
Best practices. Integrated pest management, best practices, they're supposed to be using best
Okay. Item number 2, Michelle. Pardon me, just a second, I get the staff report.
It'll be very brief.
Come on down, Michelle.
Oh, Michelle's here to
I'll take
save
my
the
cue
day.
from that and
Thank
keep
you.
it very brief. So you may recall that just earlier this year in March, we adopted the 2016 California Building Code. We were late in that cycle. But the good thing is it set us up to easily adopt the new cycle. So the new 2019 Building Code amendments came out. We've already taken the item to the BAB, the Building Appeals Board, and the building official and the Building Appeals Board reviewed and made recommendations for adoption. The only modifications, new amendments that we added were amendments related to including language regarding pools and spas, simply because the International Pool and Spa Code was being taken out, so it's just to keep the language consistent. And then the only other change is to require high fire hazard standards for alterations to properties, which essentially will make all construction within the city subject to the higher fire hazard standards. So that was recommended by both the building official and the building appeals board. And with that, we're bringing it for public hearing, and it will come back, assuming that it gets approved, it'll come back one more time for a public
Okay.
hearing.
Are there any questions of staff before I open the public hearing?
Oh, I just want to clarify what you
Yep.
just said. What did you just say about the public hearing?
So building code adoption is a unique project, so it comes back for 2 public hearings. So it'll be on tonight, and then it'll be on in 2 weeks again if it gets
Okay.
approved.
So tonight, there's no final decision?
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Then I will open the public hearing. And I have a card, Michelle Ellison. I don't know if anybody else wishes to speak on this. They need to get one to the clerk. Proceed.
All right, good evening. I'm Michelle Ellison, a resident of Ojai. I'm just simply here this evening to remind us that our work on building codes does not end this evening. Building energy reach codes, specifically those that support the transition away from natural gas to electricity, is a key climate action strategy that we can and should implement as soon as possible. Driven by the climate crisis, worsening air pollution, escalating gas rates, and safety risks from gas, local governments across California are considering policies to support all-electric new construction, and cities including San Luis Obispo, Berkeley, San Jose, and Santa Monica have just recently adopted gas bans and electrification building codes. So I urge you to give this priority attention. Ideally, we would have a policy in place before the new building code goes into effect in January. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
Michelle,
Okay.
may I ask a question? You're on the Climate Emergency Mobilization Committee.
Yes.
And has the REACH code been discussed?
We are having our first meeting, I believe, this week, if it's scheduled yet. Is that?
It's actually the second meeting,
Or
but the first meeting we had several people that missed due to flu and various other things. So we're having the follow-up meeting this week.
Right, and that's where we'll all be together. So we haven't had a chance to talk as a group of all 5 of us yet. And so I think the first order of business will be to define our scope of work and present that to you all. But then I would like to see us go through and evaluate a list of possibilities for the city to consider and include this among them. But I wouldn't say we need to wait for that to happen for us to take action on other opportunities like this as they arise.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Oh, you have a question too?
Jim?
No, I just was going to make a motion.
Okay.
Okay, well, I see, yeah, Tom?
I just want to add one thing about.
Yeah.
Good evening, everybody. The beautiful thing about building code is everything doesn't have to be adopted at once. We can amend and amend and amend throughout the code cycle. So there is a long process to code adoption. It's 2 meetings, and then we have to wait 30 days before we can enact. So that's why we're doing it so early, because the code adoption comes in effective January 1st. We want to have everything in place. So we have to kind of time it and make sure that if there's any objections, we can address that. And so that's why we're here now. But at any moment, at any time, we can modify our building codes as we just did in March.
Okay, thank you, Tom.
Okay, I have a
Okay,
que-
just a second, I need to
Okay.
continue to have some control of the meeting, I know, feeble as it may be. The public hearing is now closed, I don't see any more hands or cards. Now,
Okay, a question of staff, and, okay, let me see how to formulate my question. So my understanding is that we can, if the council so wishes, we can amend the code to include either a partial or complete gas ban like other cities are doing, okay? But would that have to go through the, my mind is just completely blank, about the BAB, the Building Appeals Board?
No.
No. We as a council, if we felt ready.
it's a policy question, not a
to-
technical question.
Okay,
Yeah.
as a if we feel
choice.
ready to have this on the agenda to consider, if I could get support, a council member to support it or the mayor to support it, we could get a report.
Yes.
Okay, so I don't know, I'll have to do that at the end of the meeting, is that right? Okay, I will.
Okay, Bill?
Yeah, I would just like to mention, this thing has really been thoroughly vetted by a lot of really smart people and focusing on the fire-resistant construction standards. I think it's a good piece of work, and I'm going to move that we move the staff recommendation to introduce the ordinance.
Okay, we have a motion to accept the staff and BAB recommendation on the code updates.
I just have one comment. I second his, Councilman Wyrick's motion. I just have one question, Tom. On the moderate and the high and the very high, I'm under the understanding that we're moving the entire city to very high.
We are not.
Okay.
So we're not modifying the map. We are addressing all zones that are within the city to apply them to apply these codes to every severity that we have in the city.
We're applying those high standards, the highest standards to all of those zones,
Yeah.
rather than fighting over the whether, how to update the map.
Yeah, the map's not changing, just the
Yeah,
standards.
the BAB finally decided that that was not a waste of their energy to argue over the map and to apply it to the code, and they seem to be satisfied. And I guess there's at least one person in the audience that, yeah, okay.
Well, all I'm trying to say in that is the fact that, high fire building standards and materials are a lot more expensive than standard building materials. So as long as the public understands that, and obviously it's in their best interest to build the safest possible home, but the community needs to recognize that it's not a cheap date. So I just want to make that clear here. It's going to be more expensive, but it's a better structure and it's a safer community, but it will be more expensive.
Right.
That's a
And
good point. Oh, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, and the insurance companies, at least according to my insurance agent, said they're well ahead of the city and other governments when they do their underwriting. It's going to be required, or you won't be able to get insurance, or it'll be a lot more expensive to insure something that is not at the meeting code, or at least the newer code. City manager.
I was actually just going to say we did kind of gloss over that. I'm glad you mentioned it, because the last time around in March we made a big point of explaining that means higher costs because it's a higher quality material. But it's good to keep that in mind. But obviously, when fire risk is as big of a concern it is, we think it's justified. So.
Great.
Yeah. Okay, so we have a motion and a second to introduce the ordinance?
We did.
Okay, is there further discussion? If not, do we need a roll call to introduce it, or can we do it with?
Voice vote's fine if it's all five.
Okay.
Aye.
All the,
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Okay, motion passes. The applause meter ruled, yeah. Okay. We are now, and what we understand is if there is interest as we, in many ordinances, in some other amendment between now and the next meeting. That's just simply, I think what Tom was suggesting is that there's enough slack or time in the system that it will delay things 30 more days every time we make a change, because it has to come back twice plus 30, right?
Yeah, so what we would recommend is if the goal was to add the reach codes or some other changes, let's do that on top. So the base adoption of the state code proceeds as normal,
Right.
could be adopted at your next meeting, and then add the reach codes on top as a second ordinance.
Okay.
You can still do it, but it would
Yeah.
keep the timeline for the base code in place.
Sounds good.
Okay,
Good,
great.
thank you.
Okay, we are now on topic number 3, and I see Tina out there. I assume that's why she's here. Creek Road traffic, Mr. City Manager. Oh, maybe I should start because I was the one that asked to push it. I was unable to meet face-to-face with the supervisor staff because of schedule conflicts, but I did have a fairly lengthy telephone conversation with both Supervisor Bennett and his chief of staff, and it was cordial. It was, I think they're doing the best they can at their end. I made it clear what we were starting to talk about up our way to continue to press this issue. Supervisor Bennett said that he was not taking, the stop signs off, which I think is one of the major things left. The two major things I think that are left. One was the speed limit for that one stretch. And his comment is just be careful what you wish for, because there is this issue under the state law that if you restudy it, the engineers and the law can raise the speed. And I said, well, we've heard that before, and we understand if people are ignoring the law, it won't make any difference what's posted. It's going to have to be enforced. The stop signs are still a possibility, but I think we should proceed with what we have some control and responsibility over, and we'll keep pushing the county to do what they can to help us. I did drive the road again and again, even though that's not my favorite route anymore, and I stayed well within the speed limit, having a parade behind me in some cases.
Yeah.
But the only place there where it's 45 miles per hour for more than a blink of an eye is the straightaway where the delineators are going to go in. And I guess that's a calculation as to whether or not the frustration of drivers is going to push the people who pass to a less safe place. But I think we have to sort of ignore that. The people who aren't going to follow the law aren't going to follow the law, and that becomes an enforcement issue. But on those curves, everything just pulls you down to 25 and 35, and so there's only, about a mile section? I don't know if it's a mile long out there that's 45. So I encourage the supervisor to see what he could do. It just seems like 40 miles max makes sense, and then we do what we can with the other legitimate methods of controlling traffic. I guess the one disappointing piece of information seems to be that the sheriff and the highway patrol, when they did their pilot enforcements and checked where people were from, this is not being caused by tourists. This is being caused by us, people, trying to get someplace, in a hurry. And yet, if somebody does I'm a lousy mathematician, but if you do the algebraic equation of leaving point A, traveling to point C at 45 miles versus 40, how much time can be saved? It's ridiculous. Part of it's going to have to be, I kind of chuckled when you said it, but I think Randy, maybe his idea of adopting the Kern River, for folks down there, it's country road, in addition to what we're going to try to do, put up some signs that say, X number of, and just keep the tally on the accidents. Maybe that'll sober people up a little bit and have them pay attention. And then I was also interested, and I don't need to do it tonight, but is to the time of day when these accidents occur, if there's any kind of a cluster, because I do know some of the people that have a tendency to maybe not only not follow speed limits, but also the open container crowd after 10 o'clock at night start using that to bypass where they think but not that many that. Okay, well, then they're better drivers. Do the Abraham Lincoln thing,
question,
send a case
yeah.
to everybody else.
A
Yeah.
question, the survey that you just stated that showed that it was the commuters, did they do that survey during the week in the morning? Because I would say that on the weekend, the problem is when we have events, it becomes a freeway of tourists.
That's a good, I don't know the
Yeah.
answer to that,
So-
but I haven't noticed the difference.
I mean, and when Tina comes to the podium, maybe you can address that.
I believe that was done throughout the week at various times, so it encompassed different times of day and different days of the week. So it was not just like 8 a.m. on a Monday morning. It was throughout the week at different times.
But not the weekend.
Yes, on the weekend as well, because Montgomery tends to be a cut-through as well.
Yeah.
Montgomery was also, so weekends was also mostly local. Okay, that's interesting. Well, we're going to have to go after them. Give as many tickets as you can. That's my, show no mercy. No, this is, I mean, it's funny, but it's not funny that we've had so many accidents.
Your terminology.
What?
Go after all.
If that bike,
I'm not laughing at what
hits 16 on the road, you better.
What?
If that bike hits 16 miles per hour, I expect you to pull her over too.
Well, I noticed that radar feedback sign that's been installed down in my neighborhood, because like Tina, I live down in that area, and it's very disappointing when I'm happy to be able to see it, because it kind of confirms what my ears told me anyway, the old Doppler effect. And you hear something getting louder and louder, it's getting closer. But now we look up and it says slow down. So on that sign, Greg, is that what do you have to exceed to get the slow down message? Is that 10 miles or 15 miles above the speed limit?
Exactly. I think we had to trigger at 5 miles an hour over.
Yeah.
Slow down up to 5 miles an hour over, and then it triggers it.
Yeah, well.
Does it flash that you're near the mayor's house? Does it say that?
Yeah.
I don't want them to know, though. They'll make me a target, yeah.
I have a question of staff. Can I ask another question? Could you explain what you mean by those not through a street?
Yeah, so we saw a lot of emails on that. I think there's a lot of confusion because people are asking if we're closing the street, and that's not the intent. The intent with those, and I guess we're blowing our cover here, but was to try to have those things pop up on mapping.
Yeah, but you can blow your cover here. There's no-
I don't think it would work anyway.
No one's watching anyway.
On the mapping things, I don't think it would take a sign over the fact that the road actually goes
I don't think it would have the impact that we're hoping for. We were trying to get creative.
Trying to trick people not to go on Creek Road. So
Right.
let's
Right,
just call it what it was.
But again, if 80%, I heard the same statistic, 80% are locals, they know that that's.
Yeah, right,
not
I guess,
gonna do anything.
yeah.
Just a
Okay.
quick comment. Yeah, there's a lot of cities that get together on the internet and talk about this. It's a common problem throughout the country and even worldwide. And they say that is effective for a certain period of time, that it works for some. I guess they actually go through and read these signs automatically and pick up a lot of stuff on
and
there.
then it figures it out.
So they've had some success, but then once they're reported enough to not be correct, then sometimes
Because they get
override it.
data on the
You can
traveling, it's going to know
legally
that
Yeah.
you can go right through it.
Right. It's the same as we have a right to say that the road's closed for road work, and you can, even the police are saying you can tag it and say that there's speed radar and all that stuff. And if people say it's not there, it gets kicked back off.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily a fan of lying to our community.
It doesn't work, unfortunately, it doesn't help.
Maybe we're too small.
Edge of Earth this way.
Not good
Small.
policy.
We're too small.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
People know.
Yeah.
Okay, do we have cards on this?
Well, I was quoted as saying, until we go too far, we haven't gone far enough. So at least we're setting some parameters.
Okay, do we have any other questions for staff before we take public comments?
City manager, did you want to cover what the city's up to, or do you want to pass on that?
If we could just show the image quickly, Public Works Director was kind enough to prepare the image that showed where we were talking about putting some of those not a through street signs, the local traffic only signs, the radar speed back sign, which is already in place, and then where some options would be to do additional signage. But we can leave that up and refer to it throughout.
Can I ask a question? I don't see anything wrong with local traffic only. That's not lying.
Yeah, that's true.
Can we do that? You feel okay about that?
Who wouldn't? I mean,
I don't know what the plan is.
who would that keep you from going on that road?
We're supposed to hear public comment before we
Okay.
deliberate.
Yeah,
All right.
let's hear from public comment because
Okay.
we have an expert that has been studying this for a long time and has very strong feelings.
I should mention that we also did a survey today. We just had a few people drive the route and measure front start to finish through that section by adding the 3 stop signs. Surprisingly, I thought it would add a lot more time. It adds around 15, 20 seconds in the northbound direction. In the southbound direction, it's 5 seconds less because there's already a stop sign in Montgomery. So I was a little surprised at that. So if our goal, that affects our goal to affect the algorithm, right? We're trying to affect the Google Waze algorithm and add a minute or half or plus.
Yeah,
to
it was 2 minutes the east end and about less than a minute on the front end.
It's
so
a
it
little bit
probably
longer than I thought. I really assumed it would be closer to 45 seconds.
That was without cars stacking. I guess that's one thought, because right now, you're saying with the test run, there wasn't a car in front of them stopping either.
Right. If you had stacking, pretty unlikely. It's not like there's heavy congestion at these intersections.
So do you sense I'm sorry, Greg, do you sense your stacking taking place at morning traffic when people are heading out of the valley to work and stacking on the way back in at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, people coming home?
Not really.
Is that what I'm hearing?
I don't sense any stacking at all. I assume that you'll have people stack very quickly. There's no cross traffic, and you'll see them moved right through those stop signs. Yeah, I just want to make sure we understood that the goal of accumulating extra time may not occur as quickly as we hope. Yeah.
Thanks, Greg.
Okay. All right, Tina, come on up.
Well, thank you all very much for taking this issue seriously and really taking the lead, because we are not having a lot of luck with county. So I appreciate you going and speaking with them, but our experience thus far has been that, for instance, just like the city of Ojai sent a letter to Google and Waze, you sent me a copy of it. You sent me a copy of the response, and Google told you, lower the speed limit, and that will help reduce it. I'd like to make it super clear. Our goal here is not just to change the algorithm. That's one part of it. This is a really complex, multiple causes causing the problem. One is the algorithm, certainly, but that's conflicting with what the sheriff's department is saying in terms of who's causing the speed, right? So that's kind of contributing to the volume, and it's also contributing to Google and the Waze, is contributing to people that are unfamiliar with driving the road, so they have to drive a little slower, and they're combined with the people that are local that are speeding, and that's what makes it dangerous. So we're not just looking to bridge some gap of 2 minutes in an algorithm. We're looking to not use Creek Road as a bypass to the highway, period. There are 9 stop signs now on the highway. I grew up here. We didn't have those stop signs. What we now have is shifted the highway to Creek Road. That's what I'm standing here and objecting to, because that's the part that's not okay. There's a lot of factors that contribute to that, and things like stop signs that the city has suggested, those start this mental thing of, I'm not going to sit into my little seat and get into like race car mode and race down Creek Road without having to stop. We're hoping that the city does exactly what you guys have suggested. We don't necessarily agree, like Councilmember Haney, in being dishonest. There is no reason to put up a sign that says not a through street. We're not going to trick anyone. I personally don't even think that the effectiveness of a locals only sign, it's not even worth $150 in the sign, really. I mean, Ramona and I are very practical about this. We are not asking for favors. Like it's been mentioned, we have 22 accidents, and part of what's wrong and where I'm going to go next with the county is the county Laura Ward forwarded me a press release because the county has now adopted an agreement with Google where the county is now not going to pay for traffic engineering data, and they're going to be reliant upon this agreement that they now have with Google to use Google's driver self-reported data as what they're using to make county-based decisions. This was just in a press release issued by the county. I find that horribly problematic. I have been battling this for over 2 years, 3 years, since Adon Laura died, right? This is since I've been battling this. I'm already having the problem that this calendar year, 2019, I have documentation of 22 accidents. Switter's only shows 19, but I have accident photos of those other 3 that are missing or so. The county only recognizes 9 of 22. So when I am having this argument, we're not even speaking the same language. So when the county says we're doing all we can, no, they're not. They are not even being honest about the reply that they received from Google that says, lower the speed limit and this will reduce part of the problem. The county has told me, we received the letter, but we didn't save it. I'll send you the letter. It's from Cindy. I don't understand this. I'm mind boggled at their resistance and the lack of honesty, because I don't understand how a government body they elicit a response or a question from Google, they get a response. Not only did they not save it, but they didn't even send it to their roads department. Yes. Yes. There's so much more than you even have been told. Steve Offerman telling Norman Bacalino to not give me a copy of the ENTS report that they did in June. How does that happen? And how can we be dealing honestly with the county when they're responding to us this way? So we need the firmest action from this city, because ultimately, a traffic circulation study and our resistance back in 2002 and 2004, that should stand today, right? It's the same today, and it's gotten worse because the freeway shifted over here. We need to do as much as we can.
Can we ask questions? Tina, or city manager, I want to see that county press release and the letter from Cindy. You can forward it to Louise to distribute, okay, I want to see that. And also, I want to know if there is a financial issue that is driving the county, to balk at these changes. Do they get less funding?
They're liable for Creek Road, so I think there may be some county liability that drives some of this protectionism. I don't know for sure.
But this is what I don't understand. There's been 22 accidents. When does liability, I don't understand this liability.
It may be the case that the county is concerned about liability if they adopt traffic standards that are different than those dictated by the standards of the Manual for Uniform Traffic Control Devices.
The county's in the process of redoing the Creek Road intersection at Arnez Grade, and I know there's litigation over it, but that's all I know.
Well, let me say this. The roads department, Norman Bacalino, has been extremely clear with me. Tina, you can have a discretionary decision made by the Board of Supervisors. It's completely within their ability. But do you want to know what's happened? Right. Every word that I have said has been siloed within our supervisors department without it even being able to get to the other supervisors. I attempted to go talk to the MAC about it directly, right? I went to the MAC. What I heard at the MAC was the MAC make a motion to write a letter to the Board of Supervisors. I'm being specific in what I'm asking for because I'm being told by Norman, this is how you need to go about this. It needs to be a discretionary decision. What resulted at that MAC meeting, Michael Shapiro talked about last meeting, right? What resulted in the minutes was removal of the actionable items, and it continued to be siloed. What we heard said was one person made a motion to write a letter to the Board of Supervisors in support of what Supervisor Bennett summarized. When the meeting minutes were produced by Steve Offerman, they took out any actionable item in there. It was just to make a recommendation to the county. Keep it siloed, right? It's not even getting out of the MAC or one person's office, and I don't know why he has such a problem with this. I'm dealing with a man that died in front of my house. This all starts with Richard Herrera, and this is the other problem with the county, right? When I started this, Richard Herrera, Adon Laura died right in front of my house. I'm home. I have to hear it. I have to see it. I get interviewed by a gazillion people, right? Richard Herrera tells me, who was the county roads department engineer at that point, an actual engineer, right? Actual licensed traffic engineer. You got to wait till the lawsuits are done, the insurance settled, we'll lower it to 40 miles an hour. Richard Herrera leaves. He is replaced by somebody who is a lower credentialed non-traffic engineer. So when we are relying upon the county to do these traffic studies, to do this segmenting of the road, look at what we're getting. They publicly say that we're going to put the 40 miles an hour to 2.275 miles, which gets us past the housing track, right? We could be happy with that as a compromise. That's not where they place it. I don't want to use the word incompetent because it's a mean word, right? But when you tell you're going to do one thing and then they hire someone else who's a really nice man, but he's not a legit traffic engineer, and they make mistake after mistake, I don't have any confidence that they're saying, hey, we don't have a need for a stop sign at Encino. I show 22 accidents. We're not even looking at the problem in the same way, and I know I'm beating a dead horse for telling you guys this problem, and it's not really your problem to resolve. Other than this is a valley-wide problem. The draw is the Ojai Valley. The traffic circulation that was done last was in 2004. That's the problem, why it's still here. And because we really are desperate to get your help. Somebody's going to die. And that's it's a mess.
Okay.
So,
Randy?
Mayor, I don't know what's in me tonight. I'm just volunteering for everything.
yeah.
You know what we need to do?
What?
You need to stop talking to one individual, you need to
Yes.
talk to 5.
Yep.
And if you need my support, I'll go with you. We'll go to a supervisors meeting, educate me on all of this, and let's go talk for 3 minutes each.
Thank you, I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
I'll do that with you,
I appreciate it.
because that's what's gonna happen here.
It is. We have to.
You're gonna have to go over our supervisor.
Yes.
You're gonna have to let the other 4 know what's going on in our community and ask for his support and ask for theirs.
I'm also going to tell them why they need to not go with Google as their source of information for future problems, because this is a perfect case example of why that doesn't work in terms of
That's okay, let's
safety.
take one issue at a time.
Yep, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Tina. Okay, so,
Can you go too?
what?
Can you go to that meeting too? I'll go if you don't go.
Yeah,
I'll go.
you can go.
We'll go.
Okay,
Okay.
so, Bill?
I think that, I would agree with what I heard so far, that probably it's a waste of money for the not a through street and local traffic signs. However, I think we definitely should send a letter on the horrific traffic calming methods, and I think we should proceed with one or more of the stop sign recommendations tonight. And the only question from my mind is, do we do all 3, or do we do one at a time and evaluate? Or a set of them? I mean, I'd be okay with all 3 of them right now, in terms of the stop signs that we can make at council's discretion. And Tina's exactly right. Council, elected officials like supervisors, can use discretionary authority over and above those traffic guidelines, and that's what we would be doing. So I'm just gonna express my preferences that we move ahead with one or more of these stop signs, as well as the letter tonight.
I'll support it.
Well, I don't agree, but only because if it's not going to achieve the goal of causing the algorithm to not put people on
The stop signs would.
we were just told they would not. So
Again, until you try it, you don't know.
oh, okay, I'm going with the opinion of our expert in house, who his job is to tell us that.
Well,
he just told us he didn't think it would, but okay.
If the design is to change the mentality that it's a highway, stop signs do that.
I don't agree. Okay, but whatever. The sign before Creek turnoff that the county wasn't working with you on, Tina, I think there might be an option. Maybe we could push for that. I agree that it's not a perfect solution, but something that says Ojai, City of Ojai, something straight ahead. I think that's good for us as a community. I think that's good for Creek Road residents. I don't think Oakview'd be upset. So I think that's something we ought to push for, and maybe we can contact Caltrans directly, see what's needed to do that. But something maybe that is, up the Arnez grade, that maybe will entice people to continue straight rather than turn right. That seems like it's still on the table as maybe a possibility. The other thing is I don't know what options for signs there are with Caltrans, but I know there's windy road, dangerous, windy road type of stuff. We may not have you can't go to, not a through street, but there may be other hazard type signs or other things that may be options at this point, because it doesn't sound like we're getting very far with anything else. So those are two things I would consider if we're going to write to I don't know whether these are county things to look after or our staff to look into.
And that is, the directional sign is item 5 in the letter.
Yeah, it wasn't written. It was kind of weird, though.
Yeah, we can call it out more. And we talked about that, too, the idea of it's a request to Caltrans. We can submit it. We were thinking they may have concern. Why is the city asking for this and not the county? Kind of a concern. So we were thinking about trying this first, and then if a month goes by, we can come back and decide we want to make that request to Caltrans. But we could make the request now. It's just that's the concern that we had.
No, maybe if we make a request on something like that and the county says no, then we can reach out to the county. Maybe we can ask the county to go in concert with us because we're just talking about a sign.
Yeah.
Maybe it's something that they will do, but they want a little political cover on.
Okay.
Obviously there's something going on that doesn't add up, and I'm concerned, and my legal brain tends to be concerned about the liability issues that have to do with Creek Road in general and with the intersection at Arnez Grade. But I will also tell you that the law, subsequent remedial remedies, the fancy word we use for fixing stuff after somebody got hurt, is not admissible to show liability. So if somebody gets hurt on a stretch of road, the city can fix it without admitting that there was something wrong with it, because the idea is, hey, we'd rather fix a problem than admit there is one, being the problem. So that is available. I would hope that the county would not be restrained from fixing something because they believe it's a liability issue.
Do we need to spell that out in the letter? Don't they know? Do they know that?
I'm sure they're aware of it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They should know the doctrine. Yeah.
Mayor, I have just a clarification question. So I just wanted to clarify what Bill was talking about. So I'm seeing the stop signs being right now that we're accountable for are at the curve as you head out of town. Am I correct? Are those the three signs that you're talking about?
Yeah, intersection Montgomery, intersection with Saddle, and intersect with Ventura Street on the sharp curve. Yeah, and I would prefer, I'll go ahead and make a motion that we exercise our discretion and install stop signs at option 1 and 3. That's the Creek Road at Montgomery Street.
Okay.
And Creek Road at the 10-mile-per-hour right-angle turn, given the oil tankers coming out there.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. I had concerns if we were going to initiate action on Encino or any of those county
Well, I would like to
streets.
start with this.
Okay,
Yeah, I have no problem starting with
Okay,
this.
so your motion is?
1 and 3.
1 and 3.
I'll second that.
Okay, we got a
I
motion.
just wanted to clarify that. Again, my issue with, and I'm sure it's the mayor's, my concern is that we take over county property, that when we do that, by initiating some form of action on it, that we assume responsibility for it.
This is not, so.
And I don't think I don't think we want to risk that expenditure,
May I ask a question to Tina?
if I'm right or not.
Sorry.
Sure.
Come to
Okay.
Tina.
Ryan.
I mean, and this isn't fair to put on you solely, Tina, but do the Creek Road residents want, do they want stop signs in these two places we're talking about? I mean, is this something that's going to be, because I'm never driving it anymore, so I'm not going to have to worry about it. The last thing I want to do is make the commute for the people that live there worse and not achieve any goals.
I'm a data-driven person, right? I've pulled the data on Ventura Street also, because Ramona and I pull Switter's data. Sheriff's Department and CHP reports to Sacramento, right? We get that information in a report. Ramona and I digest it. I've also pulled Ventura Street. Ventura Street accidents are quite high. And they've bounced up quite even higher in the more recent past. So that is, all these things are showing you, right? It's the speedway. It's the beginning of the speedway. And that sign that was just posted to alert you, I noticed, I'm a very slow and safe driver. I was looking for the sign. I was going 31. The stop signs coming south on Ventura Street at Montgomery and stopping north on Montgomery, I think are absolutely necessary, because you're building too much speed, and there have been too many accidents in the little curvy area, right? There have been, I have pictures of probably 4 or 5 accidents, and the last one was 3 or 4 cars. So they're needed at that 3-way stop. Am I the biggest fan of them at the 10-mile-an-hour curve? I think that's kind of weird, but I'm going to take what I can get. Or I'm going to zip my mouth.
Fair enough.
Because I don't believe in the county unless we all push, but we're going to get there now.
Thank you.
And along with the stop signs, I think that pavement marking of the stop ahead is, at least for me when I drive, that gets my attention more than the pink flags or whatever they are up there. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Is there further discussion? It's 1 and 3, is
I
that
have a
right?
question for Bill. Bill, why not number 2?
It's so close to 1.
Okay.
Shall we vote?
Okay, if there's no further.
Well, the only thing I'm thinking is the one's on a straightaway and one's at a turn. I mean, we're not going to get a lot of value out of stopping on a right-hand angle. But if
Well, given the number of people that are using it for sporting to run up on the dirt.
No, I'm okay with that.
But
I'm
that's
just thinking
for 3.
that
That's 3.
there's a lot more value in reducing speed by stopping people in the middle of the straightaway in front of Saddle Lane.
Well, the only reason is that the cross-traffic is higher at Montgomery. That's why I'm suggesting.
No, I'm okay with Montgomery.
You want to do all 3?
Well, I would think if I was only going to do 2, it would seem much more valuable to me to do the one in front of Saddle than the one on the sharp turn. But I'm okay with all 3, but I was just curious.
I just
what
don't
the-
feel that way because of the cross-traffic increase, like the Montgomery is more cross-traffic than Saddle.
Mayor, I have one more
So
question.
I'm just going to stay with my motion.
Okay, we'll stay, we got a staff.
Yeah, a quick comment on that 10-mile-an-hour curve is the city limit is right after the bridge, so we're going to have that stop ahead marking on the street as well as a sign. We'll need an encroachment permit from the county. So I would presume they'd give that to us. But
It's a
it'll
good
take
one to
little bit of
ask,
time.
start to ask for.
Yeah.
Mayor, I had a question for Ryan. How do you pronounce your last name? Oh, good. I'm volunteering and I can't speak. And I can't speak
That's easy
tonight.
for
I'll
you to
just-
say.
Brian, what's your thoughts as a police officer regarding putting stops on that curve? If we have a
Experience, I've worked up here at least a third of my career, both as a deputy and as a sergeant. You cannot go very fast through that 10-mile-an-hour curve. So slowing someone down from 10 to a stop, and also you're talking about private property that encroaches onto that turn as opposed to a 4-way stop that the city controls.
Right.
So the Montgomery one, the Saddle, is it? Yeah. that-
Montgomery,
yeah,
Montgomery.
those are a better application.
Yeah, that's a better application, and I agree with Councilman Blatt's reference. The straightaway is the place to stop people. Also gives you the visual to stop, right? If you come around the 10-mile-an-hour curve, or you're coming in there through that turn, and all of a sudden there's a stop sign, it could create.
I was kind of looking at it from an enforcement mechanism. The only way you're going to catch someone running those stop signs is if you position yourself on that gentleman's entrance to his property.
Correct.
So already you're the deterrent. The stop isn't the deterrent. So that's why I was asking you. You're the one that has to deal with these. You're Greg's intelligence, but your actions.
Well, we're the enforcement angle,
Yes,
of course.
would
and,
be something that
I
we need
mean,
to rely on also.
Just do all 3?
I'm okay with that.
Just a second, go ahead, Brian. Yeah, Either
from
way.
what you say, you're talking about a relatively small area where you're throwing 3 stop signs.
Right.
I think you get the more bang for your buck at the intersections as opposed to the 10-mile-an-hour
Right.
curve.
I agree.
not putting the signs up is what's been getting us the bang for our buck, isn't it, Tina? Yeah, it's amazing what they do down there. And
Okay,
you're
so
right,
Bill,
that's
would you
where
like to
they pass.
redo your
Well,
motion?
are you, is the request to amend it to all 3?
One thing I'll say is in order to put technically, if I'm looking at this right, to do the hairpin curve, there'd have to be a stop sign also for the private property exit. We only have 2 on here, but there's have to be a stop for leaving Skunk Ranch.
I don't know if that's absolutely necessary.
Yeah, it's like coming out of a driveway.
Like coming out, yeah, a driveway, you don't have
You ever
stop signs.
you ever
does
come out of a
come-
driveway in the middle of 2 stop signs?
Well, it might be safer.
We'll double check with
That would be good.
Sergeant.
Well, I'm just
but-
saying. I mean, wouldn't that? I mean, it'd be weird to have 2 roads coming to a third. And
You may be sending
I mean,
the
you may
wrong
have to stop.
message. they may be sending the message to the private property owner that they have the right of way.
Right.
Because of the stop sign, so they may create confusion for the motorist on Creek or Ventura.
It would just seem, I mean, let's say they had a guest coming out of there and they weren't familiar with it. It would seem weird that they could be pulling out into 2 stop signs yet there's
Why
not
don't
a
we do
three-way
it
stop.
where we'll do it if they'll voluntarily agree to a stop sign on the private property?
Well, you mean reach out and discuss it with
Yeah, with the property owner. They might want a stop sign there for anyway.
just for safety.
To move this forward, why don't we start up top, like, it seems that's the suggestion.
1 and 2?
Let's do 1 and 2 and get those in and see.
All right,
what
I'll
happens.
accept that amendment, get something
Watch
going.
the impact.
I'll second 1 and 2.
Let's get something going.
Okay, 1 and 2. Any further discussion? If not, roll call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Francina?
Yes.
Councilmember Blatz?
Yes.
Councilmember Wyrick?
Yes.
Mayor Johnston?
Yes.
Councilmember Haney?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes. And that included the letter.
Keep going.
That included the letter. And we, anybody in the community that gets mad at having to do a stop sign, it's our fault.
Everything's our fault.
Yeah.
A needless clarification.
That's right.
Okay, proposed amendment to agreement to Sterling Venue Ventures.
There they are,
Okay.
waiting patiently.
Patiently.
Yeah, thank you. And so we do have a representative here. Mr. Sterling is here. The item is fairly simple, so I'll keep it brief. We're proposing modifying the contract to accept a $2,500 flat fee per event rather than the current system, which relies on number of tickets sold. We think this is beneficial compared to what we've been receiving, and also we did a quick analysis with several other local venues on page 404 of the report, and we found that it was in line with most of the venues that are of equal size. So we are recommending making that modification.
Great.
Okay. Any questions, staff? Okay.
Mayor,
Do we have a card just from? Oh, yeah.
I would just like some clarity in numbers. The city received $18,437 in maintenance fees for the season 2019.
Mm-hmm.
So we did not receive any fees, we didn't receive any additional money for the concerts that were
No,
held.
it's just maintenance fees.
Okay. So if we did, and we're charging $2
50
50 cents. So is there a number, is that equate to the 7,374 tickets?
Yes.
Is that what we're hearing?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then in 2018, it says we received 24,000, and we sold 9,657,
Mm-hmm.
correct?
Yep.
Okay.
All right, well, 730.74 times 250 is $21,000, so. Or wait, no, let's see, 14,
Should add up.
no, you're right, all right, there you
Yeah.
go. Never mind.
So in this agreement, what I'm hearing is that we're gonna waive the maintenance fees and do a flat fee for the use.
Mm-hmm.
So alls I want to bring up, I'm not against it, just want to be clear on that. But I just want to bring up the fact that if we had had a maintenance, if we had had anyone else use the facility, they would have been charged $3 per person, okay, for the maintenance fee, along with the facility fee. So if we had 13 events or 14 events or 17 events with a $1,600 fee, on top of the maintenance fee. So we might have doubled, if not tripled, that fee. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think all of us have agreed that the format of the fee arrangement in the contract in the past hasn't been beneficial to us.
So, and then stating that, I think we went into this venture with the understanding that One Libby Bowl had not been branded, and that we were going to look at this and make it an equitable association where Sterling can do something good for us, and we in turn lend our facility for him to do that good. And so far, the comments that I've heard from the community are 100% behind what Sterling is doing for our community. So I'll add more in a minute, as soon as, if Mayor, are we going to close this, or are we still in discussion, or?
Yeah, I have a comments.
Okay, but I just needed to clarify those numbers.
Okay, this is questions, then we'll go to the comments, and then we'll come back for a decision. Do we have cards?
No, you
Okay.
already asked.
What?
Mayor?
You already asked, there's
Yeah,
no cards.
okay.
Mayor, if I
Bill.
could be recognized, I had a first of all, I'm very much in favor of this because it simplifies the relationship, which is always a good thing, and clarifies the relationship, which is always a good thing. And and Randy, Councilperson Haney, the problem with the system we have now is it ends up with complications discussing attendance, which we need to get away from, and this is the way to go. I have a couple of questions for the contractor, if I might. If you could come forward, just a couple of real questions. I just want to feed back to you that in addition to all the positives that Councilman Haney's talking about, and they have been very good, the negatives I've heard over the last year or so, one is the restrooms during the event, which I think is being addressed.
Yeah, we understood that also.
There were some real problems with that, some of which I personally experienced. When you go in and like, especially my wife and my granddaughter goes in, I think it was a Jefferson Starship concert last year, and they came out. There's no toilet paper. So it makes an impression. So we could avoid that kind of thing. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Number two, I hear complaints about food a number of times.
Hopefully, we're trying to find some local restaurants because the profit margin in food and restaurant business is so poor to begin
I
with.
know. And then
But
we
talked to somebody. I forgot the name, but there's a sandwich shop right on it that does box lunches, and we're trying to use locals. When we bring people in,
I know.
they don't feel it's profitable
The hot
enough.
dog cart. And,
Do you want me to say the name, or are you trying to keep it confidential?
No, we can say the name.
So Marche Gourmand.
Marche Gourmet.
Marche Gourmet is interested, and Mr. Sterling.
And all I'm saying is that's another complaint, okay? And the talk on the street is, well, Sterling must be charging so much as a overhead on the food people that they can't afford to be inside. Now, whether that's true or not, I'm just giving you feedback, word on the street. Okay, and I think a lot of people would, if there's a way to enhance the.
Word on the street is I'm a multimillionaire that's just.
Yeah, what I'm just trying to say is that clearly people have been disappointed with the food offerings inside the.
And this is, we want the same thing. Right now we've not taken anything. We don't take cuts anymore.
Right.
From the vendors because there are no vendors, so the local people, and I see their point. But I think this is an advantage because she's there, right there.
Yeah, and she likes. Yeah.
And when you guys built the center, you actually put a mini kitchen in there so that we can actually not overwhelm her.
Mm-hmm.
She can build those. The names will, like they do at the Hollywood Bowl, the names will be on the box lunches. They come over to our box office and they pick it up.
That's a real positive.
And then we can offer it to more people.
And the last thing is that we have a private business. At the entry to the entry to the city, namely Boku, that has volunteered to provide space for both emergency notifications and possibly concerts coming on a sign at the entrance to the city. There's been a fair amount of comments about it. We didn't even know there was that concert going on. And we've been debating about how to do that within the character of Ojai. I was interested in your feedback of what you think would that be somewhat beneficial to have some sort of better view of concerts coming?
The original concept was for us to supply entertainment for the people who live around here.
Right.
And on some shows, we get more tourism on others, but the goal was to get it and
I'm
to
talking about
notify.
people in town that wish they'd known about it.
Right, and to notify, because we originally were trying to put it in front of the park.
Right.
But this is actually better because it's more engaging.
So you would be in support of that if we
Yeah,
could
as long
work
as
out
it was
something.
reasonably priced.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm gonna move approval.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Well, are you going to follow up with Boku? Because I think that's a good idea.
That's a separate issue from
got the
this.
feedback.
Separate issue, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, do we need a roll call for the amendment to the agreement?
No, voice vote's fine.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Okay, so,
Thanks for your patience.
Yeah, thank you.
okay, motion carried. We are now on number 5, which is guidelines for interpretation and protocol related to, this is the historic preservation law.
Oh,
I wonder why Brian was sticking around here.
Brian, go home. Your house is on fire and your children are alone. Yeah. Okay, staff.
Thank you. So, yeah, you probably recall that we talked about this item recently when there were a couple of projects that came forward that ran into issues with the process. And so the request at that time was for us to kind of come back with with examples of ordinary repair and maintenance, minor work permits and major work permits. And those are included in the report on page 4 of 7 is ordinary repair and maintenance. There's 13 examples listed, things like gutter repairs, cleaning exterior surfaces, replacing broken glass, etc. And then there's major work permits listed on page 5 of 7, which are fairly obvious. Major construction in a historic district, a room addition or demolition, addition patio covers or changes to roof materials, and then there's some additional items. But the category that I think is the key category that had caused issues and confusion was a new category. It was the minor work permit, which was a newish development. So we've also listed 10 examples there of projects that we would say qualify for a minor work permit. A couple examples include work on an accessory structure, replacing doors or windows in the same manner as existing, repaving with different materials, which was one of the ones that came up. We've reviewed those lists, and what we think there were two issues. We don't think that considering repaving with a different material is necessarily, we do think that is a minor work permit, but we think that the actual issue and the complication were two factors. One is that the minor work permit was the same cost as the major work permit, so there wasn't really any benefit to anybody.
What was that price we set the minor work permit at, by the way?
We reduced it from, I think it was $425 to $215.
That was what you guys wanted, but I think in our meeting we reduced it.
That's right. I think it went down to.
Didn't you want it even lower? It was right. Do you remember what the number was?
115.
Yeah.
It dropped down into the hundreds, and we have that. I should have brought that.
Yeah, the number started with a 1. I remember that.
Yeah.
But so we think that goes a long way towards fixing this problem. The second thing that we want to recommend, rather than changing those categories, is that we come back with an item to streamline the minor work permit process, because the intent was that minor work permit process would be faster than a major work permit because they don't have to wait for an HPC meeting. In reality, because it's a 10-day wait plus a 15-day appeal process, it doesn't end up being any faster. And that was what the anxiety from the two people that had to go through the process was, that they had to wait for this 25-plus day process to play out. So we still recommend keeping these categories because we can think of scenarios, and maybe we're playing it too safe, could be a criticism, but we could think of scenarios where somebody could make a drastic change to a driveway that would affect the historic aspect of it. And the one I think of that I like, but not everybody likes, the very modern driveways that are the concrete squares with grass growing in them. If that showed up on a historic property, it would not, some people would like it, some people wouldn't, but it wouldn't be historic. So we
Could
think,
even have colored blocks or something.
yeah. So we do think that changing the driveway materials should be reviewed like a minor work permit, but we think that we'd like to come back with recommendations to make that process streamlined rather than change the categories. So that's ultimately what we recommend.
So what are we going to do tonight?
Well, I think Brian wanted to say something.
I have a question. So for these ones on 5-6 that you were reading,
yeah, the minor
right. These are minor work permit situations, and it would not matter whether these are non-character defining elements that would still require a minor work permit.
Right.
So even if you replace the doors and windows in the exact same manner as existing, it's $115 in 25 days.
Yes, and the reason being that somebody's got to review that.
But they have to review it even if it's not required. Everybody who has anything in the historic district has to get it reviewed. So this is getting it reviewed, and then it's the 100, because if at the end of that they could say it doesn't require anything, and you're free to move forward.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I think out of the 10 items listed, that's the one that you could make an argument. It is ordinary repair.
Well, the only other thing I'd say is some are really vague. Like a retaining wall, I mean, what does that even mean? Like if you...
Mm-hmm.
Like if you paint a retaining wall, something back, or would that fall under
install a
different
retaining
category?
wall,
like a gazebo or an arbor. Like if you have a broken piece of wood on a gazebo, you can't replace it without a minor work permit.
Well, these I read these as, or when we drafted it, as installing, adding a swimming pool, adding a fire pit, adding a gazebo.
All right. Well, just because it said adding a deck or patio, when we get down here, it doesn't say adding or anything.
Yeah.
So if you're saying that, like, that would be new construction situations, but if
Right.
these are guidelines, that's missing the guiding part.
Yeah, so we can, so somebody asked, what's the ask? The ask would be that we come back with a recommendation to streamline the minor work permit process. When we do that, we can come back and even refine these guidelines a little bit.
Pirates Code.
And the guidelines would be baked into a resolution to be adopted by council. This is
Yeah.
a term sheet of sorts.
So we need to hear from Brian.
Okay, Brian, you're up.
It's okay?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, good.
But hurry.
It was time for, yeah, it was time to get up, right? Yeah.
You don't need to take the full 3 minutes.
Sprained a knee on Saturday, and I'm here because I am missing my grandson's volleyball game in Santa Maria tonight, for which I drove 2 hours each way last week to attend. Anyway, I think in December it will come up on 5 years, hoping this thing will find itself dying and official at some point, and I'll stop coming. When we were going through the 4 years of doing this, all these questions were raised. We put details in it. We brought it before you. All of that went. It was criticized by some people who were like, okay, so if you say 4 foot can be replaced, what if it's 5? And so we had our ad hoc committee. We talked about all of these issues over the many weeks. And so we were trying to put in guidelines as opposed to specifics. Because if you have 10 guidelines or examples, this is my own personal experience, that means that the 990 that you're going to actually do, you don't really need to talk to the city because they're not listed. So that's, I think, why we were looking for more general guidelines. Typically, we would care about a character-defining element. So if the driveway and how it was set up was a character-defining element, then we would care if you're going to change the color or do something else on that, because we're looking at historic preservation. If it's not, again, we got reamed by someone that was here that criticized us because of the driveway. We had nothing to do with the driveway or changes or anything else. We brought up the time frame in both of our HBC meeting, our ad hoc committee meeting. These time frames are not the Historic Preservation Commission, nor are the fees the Historic Preservation Commission for that one person who's criticized us. These are city council guidelines. We did bring up the fact that we meet on a monthly basis. One of the things was,
Are you throwing the council under the bus? What is this?
We all noticed that, Brian. We saw that.
Just blame staff.
There's more of you taking responsibility for it. We weren't trying to put it on
Staff,
you.
it's council.
That's what we're
This
here
is not helping your case. Come on.
It's helping my mind.
You're getting it off your chest, okay.
I am. I held back from saying something tonight, even when I was going to speak.
Waited this long, get it out.
I am very loyal to but again, the same time frame. Time frames happen. The government is the government. We all get new people on our commission who are like, well, can't we landmark it tonight?
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah.
Right.
You're
Yeah.
kidding, right? Yeah, no, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So timeframes are inherent in the code. We do what we can, but again, the thing was to try to simplify it, not try to make it specific to 10, 12, 14, 100 different guidelines.
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
you're in support of it, is that correct?
I am.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we have,
And it's not Brian's fault, just so if
No.
it goes.
Yeah, right.
Or HPC. The
clear.
HPC's off the hook for this.
I
Okay.
think the feedback's pretty clear. I like what you know.
Yeah.
Okay, so what, do we need a motion to do anything tonight, or are we going to refer it back, or what?
Consensus is fine to refer back to staff to draft something for your review.
Simplify
Do
and
you,
track.
do you have do
Okay.
you have a method? I mean, do you have an idea for how to fix the timeline issue?
I don't, but we just hired Joe Fiss, who has some
Are you a
experience.
timeline
so
expert?
I think he's got some ideas.
Welcome, by the way.
If not, he'll come up with
All
them
right.
quick.
That's right, we'll throw him under the bus, along with the council. Yeah, right, good.
Welcome from Moore.
It's his fault.
His next meeting, it's Brian. You'll blame at the next meeting.
Welcome to Ojai from Moore Park. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so the staff is satisfied, they know what they're doing. Okay, next topic then. We are now direct regarding repealing section, amending for blah, 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 Ohio Municipal Code on sidewalk vending. Okay,
Thanks,
thank you,
Brian.
Brian. Okay, staff, what do you,
So
Mayor, one second. Do we have any cards on this?
I don't know.
I'd like to make a motion before we get into all this. I think, this could change this entire community, just this simple ordinance. And I would personally like a little more time to study it. I'd like a little more time to ask more questions and especially from the state and the state guidelines. I sent Matt some questions today early on, but so I would like to table this till the next council meeting. We could vote on that and save some time. I'd
We have a motion?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, moved and seconded. For discussion? No discussion?
Talk about this item, right?
Charge me for the cup of
Okay,
coffee.
so ordered. Okay.
Just got it out of a vending machine.
Matters
The irony.
continued, matters continued to win.
We all need to read this carefully.
Okay.
Do we have a time when it's going to come back, or is this just?
I understood the request to be just push it to the next meeting, and then that, we'll change the date and put it back on as is.
Okay.
Yeah, we're just
And
gonna continue.
that provides time to further consider the matter.
Okay, fine. Okay, then.
No, we need more input. I received a ton of, I think we all did. We received a
Yeah.
ton of phone calls today, and we just need,
We'll talk to the chamber.
Right.
Okay, good, good.
Okay, we are to council reports. Randy?
I had a whole list from Caltrans regarding all the money that's gonna be spent on the 33 and the 150, and it comes to millions and millions of dollars, and it's all in the design phase right now, so just.
Okay, thank you. Ryan?
Which, are we on?
Council,
Reports?
your reports if you have them.
James and I met with Patrick Maynard with the Office of Emergency Services with the Sheriff's Department for the County of Ventura as a result of some comments I made at a VCOG meeting to CEO Michael Powers. It went very well. I think some of the concerns I had post Thomas Fire that I was not on the council for, I really think the county has done a good job of addressing. I understand better what the individual roles and responsibilities of our staff and our council members are. Not that the council member really responsibilities are very delineated, but at least I am confident that there is a much better system for communication up the food chain that was not there before. So what I can say that everybody should kind of realize is that if we are in an emergency situation in this valley again, get information however you can, whether that's, and I'm always happy to help, if we can get it to James or to our Emergency Operations Center, then there is a streamlined way to get that to the county. And anything you can think of that fits into communication that's incorrect, whether it's on the VC Alert website, whether it is something you see on Facebook, if there's anything that can help, because I saw lots of things in my experience in the Thomas Fire that I wish I could have had the access to call somebody and say, hey, bad information's out there, can we get it adjusted? There is a mechanism to go through that. So that would be the biggest takeaway I think I learned from there. And the technology that they're using, I mean, from top to bottom, everything has been improved a lot. So James and I had a really good meeting on that. Other than that, I don't think there's anything else.
Ryan, could I ask a
that's
question?
good.
Yeah.
I would assume that that state of mind change might also include non-emergency early notifications of, film shoots on state highways.
Yeah, well, it's funny. I did one of the
I
first.
assume, I'm saying, I hope that includes the mindset. That,
Well, the
early
iron-
rather than later.
Yeah, well, the irony of the meeting we had, it was on Thursday, and the first thing I said to him was, we should have made you drive up here on Tuesday, because that's when the traffic was.
I
so bad.
stayed home Tuesday and Wednesday.
Yeah, and I will tell you, I had to go to the courthouse. I went through Santa Paula. That wasn't too bad, but for whatever it's worth.
But I just think the state of mind issue is what I'm
Yes,
addressing.
and one thing that is, one of the questions I asked is, what is the breadth and scope of responses that you're responsible for? And it was much larger than I thought, but it wouldn't necessarily include a film shoot unless there was a real emergency. But it did include a lot of other emergencies that you may not expect that they would operate. And if we call them and request of them as one of their customer cities, there's a high obligation that they have to feel like they need to open things up and assist us anytime we need it. So essentially said, hey, if you guys got some up there that's not an emergency to us, tell us and we'll figure out how to help. And a lot of extra resources from around the state and other cities. If we can't staff people, it was really get the information to us and we'll work together with you a lot better than we have in the past to figure out how to help it. So.
Okay, on Thursday nights, the CERT training is now taking place at the Resource Center down in Oakview. Not that anybody, if you haven't enrolled already, don't, because it's You have to be in for this if you're interested in doing that. I'm sitting in on it just to see what we're passing along to our citizens, and it looks to me like it's very much what Delaney did, that DVD or
Oh, yeah.
CD or whatever it was, DVD, I guess, that provides good information. There's about 35 people in the class, and they're still they still remember the Thomas Fire. It's amazing how quickly, though, people start to go off and do something else. So headed into the fire season, I'm looking forward to the report back on how we're doing on combustibles in the city, and I would suggest that maybe we get in touch with the county parks department and have them do a little trail maintenance through the city. We got trees that are you can't even walk under, let alone ride a horse or a bicycle.
Palm fronds.
Yeah, so that would be helpful. I know they have a fund for that. They just have a lot of bike trails. So, okay, Susan?
Okay, so last week we did another Bike to School week, and I just want to say we don't do this just as a lark. It's a lot of fun, but it's also to show that kids really want to ride their bike. And I want to say again that it's a shame that we as a community have not yet made this a top priority. I want to report that the bike train itself was small, but we had at Topa Topa School on average 45 bikes each day plus scooters. And the reason it's lower, I figured out the second day, is because there's no longer a 6th grade. Because last time we did it, we had 75 bikes, and most of, all the 6th graders rode. But first of all, the no parking helped a lot. The first day, Monday, there were a couple of people that either disregarded it or they didn't understand it. But then the second and third day, it was great, the visual, to look from the top of Grand all the way down and know that no zigzagging would have to take place. But the thing I didn't anticipate was all the road work. It started on the second day, and then there were detours, and so it got pretty hairy. The officers wanted to go through the roadblock. They thought, but when I saw those machines, I mean, I personally cannot tell you how responsible I feel for every single child. And it was hairy because there was more traffic on Grand, and I mean, it was enjoyable and stressful at the same time. But so yes, the no parking from 7:30 to 8:30 was enormously helpful, and possibly it could be on a future agenda. And I don't want to, my motivation, my ultimate goal is that we will do what's been discussed for about 25 years, is that we remove car parking on one side of the street, unless somebody has a better solution, with the right-of-ways and all of that, and restripe the street. Because anyone who thinks that a young child can negotiate commuter traffic by just sharing the road like cyclists do on the weekend is dreaming. I challenge anyone who, because we've had testimony, we've had people say that, oh, bike lanes are not needed, sharing the road works just fine. Well, it's fine for people like me who used to riding, but that's my report. That's my report.
Okay, all right.
And I want to tell you that almost every single parent personally thanked me. They want to do it. All the children say we want to do this every day. Parents told me how excited the kids were that this was happening. So there was great enthusiasm, and we want to reclaim, we're a small town, we need to reclaim that kids can ride safely. And that's all I want to say.
Okay. Thank you for your courage. And
Yeah.
Bill.
The idea of leading kids through the work zone, I like that image there.
Well, we went to we zigzagged over to eucalyptus,
Yeah, I know.
and then we got back on there, and I wanted to take the deep.
No, I didn't mean to
Wait,
start. I didn't mean to start you up again.
I
had the floor now. Okay.
I had to go back and pick up the kids.
All right.
You'll learn, Bill.
Yeah, I
You'll
learned.
learn,
I know.
maybe.
I know. We had a very successful meeting, Randy and I, with the Broadband Consortium people operating the head of the Central Coast Broadband Consortium for the state, operating through EDC-VC. The good news is we found out the priority corridor that they're looking at implementing is Carpinteria to Santa Paula. We're in the middle. They want us to be a partner city. Mr. Fleming has set this up. We've learned a lot about how we are right in the middle of their priority, including outside funding options for broadband conduit laying. Various options are talked about. We had a great participation from other special districts, and Mr. Fleming is working on a way of maybe extending him taking the lead in terms of coordinating across agencies and working out funding options, routing options, and really finally doing something significant in terms of what I'm viewing as an impediment towards economic diversification in our local economy, namely broadband deployment. And great news that we're right in the middle of what's a priority right now.
Mayor, can I add on to that? One interesting point that they made was utilizing the actual bike trail.
Yeah.
As
yeah.
a
As a-
methodology, or
as
as
a-
a means.
yeah.
The horse part.
Versus having to, trench down the middle of downtown.
Exactly.
I thought that was very interesting.
It's a brilliant idea. Yeah. So anyway, and I know that Santa Paula is and one of the reasons for the priority that we are taking advantage, that we're lucky about, is the Limonera development in Santa Paula is one of the things that made this such a significant corridor priority. And so Santa Paula is on board with that, but there is a category called Partner City that I think we need to look at achieving, and Mr. Fleming's looking at that. We could actually finally make some progress on this.
Okay, city managers report.
I wanted to note just one thing people have probably heard about, the public safety power shutdowns that are coming. And Patrick Maynard mentioned
Well,
these
did you
as
just roll your
well.
head because you're in my district where our power got turned off on the other night?
And this
Well,
on top of them turning off the power Sunday night?
Well, so coming up in the next couple days, they're anticipating a Santa Ana
It
event.
was fun, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And the Office of Emergency Services sent us an email today, the County Office of Emergency Services, and said, take the opportunity to remind people of both things. One is that there's an increased fire risk with Santa Ana's coming, so always be prepared for those. But second is they're talking about doing a shut-off that's going to affect 300,000 people in Southern California. And right now, Ojai is not in that group. They have the Fillmore area is the one area of Ventura County that's in the group, but it's always one of those be prepared because it's going to happen at some point.
So, Mayor, just I want to piggyback on that. We are, I am, and Councilman Wyrick, we're meeting with a group of guys that are solar experts, and we're helping James write the white paper to come back to council regarding solarizing this community. And this was one of the main things that they talked about with PG&E as well as Southern California Edison, having the right now to shut down power in the event of high winds or whatever they feel is necessary. Having a backup system in a community is just something every community should be looking at.
Yep.
So it's a good time for all this.
May I ask, when do you think we'll have the white paper?
We're working on it this week. We're working on
It's another one of
it.
those things that I volunteered for, so it's.
Yeah, I think contracting must be slow now.
Yeah, taking advantage.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, James, is that it?
So that's all I had. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. We've had a kind of a training period here. I think was it next Monday or next Wednesday, they're talking about shutting power off again as they've been rolling. Yeah, it's amazing how quickly you realize how the muscle memory of throwing light switches and that didn't work, or so it's just a matter of adapting, and it's a good thing that we're getting ready to be adaptable before they shut us down.
Flashlights.
Well, in our neighborhood,
Flashlights that work.
They turned the power off, and they turned the power off on Sunday night, and before they could get it back on, they were doing work on the water system.
Yeah.
So it was loud, cars, trucks all night.
They're putting a
in the
new
morning.
pole in. All I can say, boy, those stars sure came out. With
I know.
I went out at
How'd it look?
night,
Just
dark
11 o'clock
skies.
at night.
Yeah,
I'm like,
benefits to
whoa.
everything.
It was bright. It was really bright. I
Okay,
could see it
future
from my
agenda
place.
items?
Well, you were right next to it.
I was a whole block up.
I have requested, real quick, that, not an emergency thing, but ordinance 658, which was on our agenda item number 3. That's the Creek Road ordinance. It's kind of tied to the city of Ventura. I've provided some comments on how we ought to think about updating and strengthening that. And I just have made that request.
City of Ventura or county?
It's our ordinance, 658.
Yeah.
Which is in the back of.
Yeah, but you said, are you saying?
Yeah,
with this-
for example, there is a provision in there, Section 3. This ordinance shall only take effect upon the action of the Ventura County Board of Supervisors to implode
Yeah,
equivalent.
well, I was just
restrictions.
questioning, I thought you said city of Ventura. You
No,
meant
I made a
county.
mistake.
Yeah,
And
no,
what I think
okay.
is that we ought to take a look at that ordinance 658. I've asked that we look at the wording to update it. I hope that there's support for that.
Okay, what happened with the conversation with the inn? I know it was in the packet, but it didn't really say much.
We did have the
Or it was
conversation
still-
with
oh, that's
the
right,
inn.
you were gonna follow up.
We were
That's what it
scheduling
was.
it when we wrote the packet, but I met
remember.
with him yesterday, and
Okay.
same situation we're all in. He said their deliveries, they put it in their phone and they follow Google. And he goes, he said, we want all of our people, our visitors, our service people to come in off the 33 and come in through the nice entryway.
Yeah.
But they're putting the address on Google and it's taking them
Can't
around.
they just
Crete.
make that a provision of contracting
So
with their vendors?
we talked about that, and
Oh.
we have some discussion going on with
Okay.
it. But that was just very quick.
Agenda items, did you have a time certain for that?
No,
or
I
just?
just-
Okay, so it's on the list. Okay,
And,
Susan.
and their advertising could emphasize that.
Yeah, we talked about some ideas.
Okay,
we'll-
Susan,
Okay, okay.
did you have
Yeah,
something for the agenda?
Did you say that the Boku sign has to be agendized?
the wrong entrance.
It could be.
For-
I actually met with Reno
We're
and
developing a proposal. I think.
Okay.
I met with Reno and was told him we'd follow up on it, but we can develop that.
Let's just develop a proposal.
Oh, okay, and then I would like to see the REACH code and a discussion on the whole issue, the whole scope of what other cities are doing, transitioning to no gas or less gas, or I'd like to understand it better. I did listen to that conference call, but I don't know if the timing is right. But
Well, I think we got to, are you asking for a workshop on the subject?
No,
Or are you
no, no,
talking, do you have a
no,
proposal you'd like to have?
Okay, no, I'd like to know how to I'd like to find out if there's support to amend the code, but my understanding is that the code can be amended at any time. If you're overloaded with work, I don't know about, I would like to see it on the agenda, I just don't know.
Well, the code is
about
going to
the
be on the
time.
agenda in successive meetings, and if any of us should choose to change anything, whether it be the REACH or anything else, then it starts the clock again, right, as far as having
No,
public.
no,
If you
I want to
bake
do
it
what
in-
you said, yeah.
If you bake a change like the REACH code or anything else into the second reading of the building code ordinance, then it restarts the clock.
I don't want to do that.
But you could also do it as a separate ordinance on top,
I want to do it as,
independent of the
yeah.
of the building code's adoption for the state code.
What, and overlap them as we go? So you don't
Exactly.
have-
My problem is priority, Mayor, and Susan. I think that I want to focus on things like this internal combustion engine issue. I think that's low-hanging fruit.
yeah, do that
And I don't want
first.
to have that be displaced by some of these overarching
Okay,
things.
I agree that we, after
Just
that,
one other thing along with
yeah.
your thought. This is a great, this would be one of those great subject matters for the new sustainability committee to actually investigate and to actually bring back as much information as they can. Just because 4 cities in the state of California have done this doesn't mean it's in our best interest. Let's let them go get the information and bring back to us as a council.
Yeah, I think Michelle already will be doing that, and can have it back at any point. I've kind of wrestled with this idea about doing it, and in Arizona, when I built houses over there, maybe I said this before, but when I was asking my partners, hey, when are the rest of the utilities going to come into the building site? And they said, they're all in. And I said, no, I haven't seen the gas company. And they said, gas company? We don't use gas in Arizona. Nobody wants to buy the houses. They're afraid of blowing up. I said, you got to be kidding. This is in the 80s. So it just seems like that isn't an essential part of it. But somebody was also explaining to me that the use of natural gas is a byproduct of another industry or of the oil industry, and they flare it if they don't use it. So it is a little
And
complicated.
There's the
but I think,
biogas issue. There's,
but I think as soon as Michelle comes up with something that we can actually propose, then we can put it back on the agenda.
And we had one new single-family residence construction, I think, in 2018, so we're not going to switch all these out real quick.
Yeah, right.
That's
Well,
what
there's
I'm
not
saying.
much left. I
It's
mean,
not
it's
going to
mo-
have that much impact. So
Yeah,
let's
it's mostly
focus
city.
on what has impact.
Yeah,
You know?
well, yeah.
I think we can do both. but
Efficiency, I
At
agree,
the right time,
Bill.
at the right time.
Low efficiency.
Okay.
Let me see if there's anything else. Okay, now what about, let me think this through. I'm not going to request it yet. Yeah. I wanna-
Well, then,
Okay, so we're,
Yeah,
we're
I'll talk, I'm
where'd
going
you-
to talk to them.
You didn't go back around, but.
back.
Well, I just want everybody to know there was an interim settlement reached. I was going to explain what was going on in the Channel Keeper case. The interim settlement is between Ventura and Channel Keepers. It does not alleviate everyone else who are the cross defendants. It's been hard to get information, but essentially Channel Keeper and Ventura agreed to a short-term settlement that does not include forever, but it does all the things that Channel Keeper wanted to improve stream flow from the city of Ventura until a global decision is made. However, based on information as of middle of last week, Ventura is saying they're still going to move forward with a full adjudication that will require notice to every landowner in the watershed. So the main portion of the case is settled, but it's not a settlement for everyone, which is a very strange position that we're all in. But it is a substantial part to moving forward, but it's not going to stop the horror that will be a release of sending out.
that's the city not being a good neighbor. I'm just going to say that.
Well, the city. I mean, look, I
City
think
of Ventura.
the city. I think the city has gone a long way in procuring this settlement. I think it's a real positive step, but it's not. I don't think
No.
they could have done something.
But
that
the
would have fixed
carve-out
everything.
is consistent with their notion that they have rights to the entire Ojai Valley.
No, I'm commenting on that, but it just so everybody knows, it doesn't mean it's
not a
over.
good. It's not a neighborly thing to do.
Yeah, there you go. That's it.
Okay. Thank you all.
Gavel, all right.